My name is Keqi. I live in an old, rundown manor at the southern edge of the Gothic kingdom. Every day, I practice my sword. The family style, simple but useful. Nobody ever taught me properly, so I figured it out on my own, move by move. My only companion is Lizzie, my little maid. She's about 11 or 12, short but hardworking. She takes care of everything, cooking, cleaning, all of it. Today she called me in for lunch with that cheerful voice of hers. Black bread and mashed potatoes. She said it like it was some kind of feast. I could only sigh. Black bread is already hard to chew when it's fresh. The next day, it turns into something like a rock. I worry that when I get old, I might starve just because my teeth can't handle it anymore. But I have no choice, so I eat what I have. This manor is all I've got. It's just me and Lizzie here. There used to be an old butler who taught me reading, writing, and noble manners. But once I learned enough, my father took him back to manage the main castle. I am the eldest son of a baron. My mother died when I was young. I should have inherited the title, but when I was 3, I fell terribly ill, or so everyone thought. The truth is, I awakened memories from a past life. My adult soul woke up inside a tiny child's body, and the mismatch nearly destroyed me. My body became weak, and no doctor could find the cause. Medicine didn't help. Tonics made me worse. Eventually, my father gave up on me. He remarried a noble woman, and they had a son and a daughter together. My stepmother wanted her own children to inherit everything, so she sent me away to this broken-down manor at the edge of our territory to live or die on my own. My father didn't stop her. Her family had too much influence. 9 years have passed since then. I'm 12 now. All this time, I've been training in secret, using the family's breathing technique to strengthen my body. It's a crude method. It can only carry me to the level of a high-rank knight at most, but it was enough. I spent 3 years as a trainee knight, holding back on purpose, letting my body catch up with my soul. Today, I finally decided to break through. After lunch, I told Lizzie not to wait for me at dinner. I went into my secret room, sat down cross-legged, and began the breathing exercise. I let myself sink deep into the rhythm. Magic particles from the air flowed into my body, tempering my flesh and bones. Hours passed in silence. Then, at midnight, something shifted. A pulse of energy burst from inside me. I broke through, not just to beginner knight, but all the way up to mid-rank, middle stage. And in that same moment, my soul and body finally became one, completely merged. For the first time in 9 years, I felt truly whole. I took a deep breath and felt like all the frustration of these long years left my body at once. I felt light, strong, alive. The breathing technique now ran on its own, like a heartbeat I didn't need to think about. I went to the well in the backyard and dumped a bucket of cold water over myself. It was late autumn, the night wind was sharp, but I didn't feel cold at all. As for my father's title, I don't care about it anymore. I stopped caring the day they threw me out. The only reason I stayed in this territory was because I was too weak to survive on my own. Now that's changed. I started thinking about my future. In this world, strong people usually serve nobles, as guards or soldiers, and eventually earn a knight's title for their family. Others become adventurers, taking jobs from guilds or joining wars for pay. Some noble children who won't inherit go out as pioneer knights, claiming wild land and earning titles from the kingdom. At first, I thought about finding a quiet village on the border, farming the land, living a simple life. But then I discovered that this world has real supernatural power, magic, extraordinary strength, things beyond ordinary limits. That changed everything. I decided to see how far I could go before settling down. The best place to grow stronger is the Royal Knight Academy in the capital. I'm 12 now, old enough to enroll. The academy only accepts nobles, so at least my birth is good for something. But my family won't pay for me. The tuition is 500 gold marks, a fortune for common people, since a family of 3 can live a whole month on just 2 gold marks. An ordinary person would need over 20 years of savings to afford it. I'll have to find the money myself. I don't know yet if I have talent for magic. If I do, becoming a mage would change everything. Even low-level magic potions sell for gold marks each. I stood there looking out into the dark night, my mind already far away. I came to this world, after all. It would be a waste not to see what it has to offer. There were only about 3 hours until dawn, but I didn't feel tired at all. I picked up my old iron sword. the same one I'd carried for 9 years, and started practicing again. I needed to get used to the sudden surge of strength from my breakthrough. My sword style doesn't have many moves, but each one works together with the breathing technique. 9 years of practice. I wondered if that counted for anything. Before, my body was too weak to risk going into the magic beast forest. Now, things were different. It was time. I trained through the early hours, slowly getting control over my new power. By the time fish-scale clouds appeared on the eastern horizon, I finally stopped to catch my breath. Lizzie was already up and busy. When she came to the backyard to fetch water, she spotted me standing there, sweating. "Young master, why are you up so early?" she asked. Then she noticed the sweat on my forehead and got upset. "Did you stay up all night practicing? Don't you know your body can't handle that?" She grabbed my arm and started pulling me inside, telling me to go sleep before breakfast. "Hey, little girl," I said, grinning. "Don't you notice anything different about me today?" She stopped and looked me over carefully. When she saw the healthy color in my face, no longer pale and sickly, her eyes went wide. "Young master, did you take some kind of magic medicine? You look so much better." "I'm completely healed," I told her. "My body is strong now, and I've broken through as a knight. I can finally protect myself. From now on, stick with me. We'll eat well and live well." She smiled at that, caught up in my happiness. But then she couldn't help teasing me. "Eat well? If it weren't for me, you would have starved to death a long time ago." "That's because you're a miser," I shot back. "We still have some gold marks saved up, but you sit on that money jar like a dragon guarding treasure. That's why I've been eating one meal and skipping the next." We spent the morning like that, laughing and arguing the way we always did. While Lizzie started on breakfast, I went and grabbed her savings jar. I poured everything out and counted it. 32 gold marks, 223 silver marks, and 108 copper marks. 1 gold mark equals 100 silver marks, and 1 silver mark equals 10 copper marks. That was everything we had. After the old butler left, the family completely cut us off. Lizzie had stretched every coin to keep us alive. If I had been in charge of the money, it would have been gone long ago. When she came in and saw me staring at the pile of coins, she frowned. "Young master, are you planning to spend money again? Just tell me what you need. I'll go buy it." "I'm going to the magic beast forest," I said. "I need to hunt some low-rank beasts and earn enough money for us to travel to the capital. What we have now isn't nearly enough for the two of us. The Knight Academy costs 500 gold marks, and they have the advanced techniques and combat arts I need. There's no other way to earn that kind of money, so I have to go." That scared her. "It's too dangerous. Please don't go." But I had made up my mind, and she could see it in my eyes. In the end, all she could say was, "Fine." After breakfast, she packed me a day's worth of dry food. I took 30 gold marks and left without delay. I could feel her worried gaze on my back as I walked away. I headed to a small town at the border between the human settlement and the magic beast forest. The town was lively. Groups of adventurers came and went. The Adventurers Guild had set up a branch here where people could pick up jobs and sell materials from the forest. First, I found a blacksmith shop and bought a proper iron sword. Just that one sword cost me 20 gold marks. Looking at the 10 I had left, I suddenly understood Lizzie's penny-pinching ways. I spent another 6 gold marks on a wilderness backpack, armed guards, a small tent, a dagger, fire-starting tools, and other survival supplies. With everything ready, I set off alone toward the forest. On the way, I passed a few adventurer groups. Some of them looked at me like they were thinking about inviting me to join, but when they saw how young I looked, they changed their minds. That was fine by me. I wanted to go alone anyway. The deeper I went, the fewer people I saw. The forest grew thick and winding. Birds called from the canopy. Beast roars echoed in the distance. It was beautiful in a way, like a nature park, but I didn't let myself relax. This was the beast's territory, and one mistake could mean death. Soon enough, I ran into ordinary wild animals. With my new strength and a good sword, I handled them easily. As more came, I got better at reading their attacks. Animals are simple, they lunge and bite. Once you dodge the first charge, a mid-rank knight like me can finish them off without much trouble. But ordinary animals weren't what I came for. They wouldn't bring in real money, so I didn't bother collecting them. I just left the bodies where they fell. The smell of blood would draw scavengers soon enough. Then the animals started thinning out. That put me on edge. It meant I was entering real magic beast territory. I didn't know what kind of creature I'd meet first, or whether I could actually fight it. I moved carefully through the forest, keeping all my senses sharp. Then I heard the sound of running water ahead. I pushed aside some bushes and saw a clear stream with green grass and flowers on both banks. Butterflies danced among the blossoms. It looked peaceful. Then I spotted it, a creature drinking at the water's edge. My heart jumped. A jungle deer, a low-rank magic beast. My luck wasn't bad at all. Jungle deer aren't strong fighters, but adventurers love hunting them. Their antlers are the best material for making magic staffs, and they sell for good money. Still, even a low-rank magic beast is dangerous. This one had wood element powers and could control vines to attack. My only chance was to dodge the vines, get in close, and finish it with my sword. I pulled back into the bushes and circled around to the deer's blind spot, planning a surprise kill. But just as I crept into position, a black bird in the tree above me let out a sharp, piercing cry. It had spotted me and was warning its flock. More black birds flew up from the stream. My cover was blown. The jungle deer turned and stared right at where I was hiding. No point sneaking anymore. I stepped out, sword in hand, and faced it head-on. The deer didn't run. It didn't see me as much of a threat. It attacked first, sending 2 vines whipping toward me. I slashed left and blocked right, cutting through both vines, then rushed forward and swung my sword down hard, aiming to end it in one strike. But the deer was faster than I expected. Before my blade could land, it leaped straight at me, antlers aimed at my chest. I knew I couldn't dodge in time, so I changed my move. I threw up my left arm to block the antlers and thrust my sword into its neck with my right hand. The blade punched clean through its throat, but the antlers slammed into me hard, sending me flying backward. I rolled with the impact to soften the landing. When I got up, I heard the deer screaming in pain, thrashing its head wildly, trying to shake the sword loose. But the blade had gone all the way through. It was already dying. I didn't approach. I just stood back and waited. The more it struggled, the faster it bled. In less than 15 minutes, its eyes went dull and it collapsed to the ground. I waited a bit longer to be safe, then walked over. I pulled my sword out, flicked the blood off the blade, and grabbed the antlers. I cut them free with a few strokes. My prize was in hand. I let out a breath of relief. That's when the pain hit. My left arm was throbbing. I took off the arm guard and saw it was red and swollen. Without the guard, the antlers probably would have snapped the bone clean in half. I sighed. Fighting up close like this was rough. Too easy to get hurt. If I were a mage, I could attack from a distance and not worry about taking hits like that. I made up my mind. Once I got to the Knight Academy, I'd find out if I had any talent for magic. I packed up my prize and left quickly. The smell of blood by the stream was getting thick. If I stayed, other magic beasts would come looking. I kept moving, running into a few ordinary wild animals, but no more magic beasts. I didn't dare go deeper. If low-rank beasts lived at this depth, higher-rank ones would be further in, and a mid-rank knight like me had no chance against those. As the sky darkened, I needed to find a place to camp. Nighttime in this forest belonged to the predators. I started heading back the way I came, looking for a safe spot. That's when I heard voices. I stopped and listened carefully. A group of adventurers was talking nearby. Tomorrow, let's go to the cliff to pick vitality grass. That stuff is worth a fortune. But we need to watch out for rock eagles up there, so we'll need a plan to avoid their attacks. Vitality grass. I knew about that. It was the key ingredient for vitality potions, healing medicine that worked almost instantly on wounds. Adventurers love the stuff. I would have bought some myself if I wasn't so broke. If I could find out where this cliff was, maybe I could get some of that grass too. While I was thinking about how to learn their location, a sharp voice cut through the air. Who's there? Come out. Show yourself, or I'll shoot. A man with a bow was pointing an arrow in my direction, his face tense. His companions had already taken fighting stances, ready to attack. I'd been discovered. I called out calmly, "Easy, friends. I'm just passing through. If I'm disturbing your rest, I'll leave right away." I stepped out of the trees slowly. When they saw my face, they froze for a moment. The archer muttered under his breath, "It's just a kid." I looked over their group. A swordsman, a bowman, a big guy with a shield, and behind the shield bearer, a woman holding a magic staff, their mage. A standard adventurer party. They relaxed a little. A teenager alone in the forest wasn't exactly a terrifying threat, but the swordsman didn't let his guard down. "Don't relax," he said quietly to the others. This kid is a mid-rank knight. The big guy with the shield raised an eyebrow. A mid-rank knight? What? Is some noble brat out here playing adventurer? He seemed amused, not worried. They had the numbers, after all. We sat around the campfire that night and talked about the plan for tomorrow, going to the cliff to pick vitality grass. We were all adventurers trying to make a living, and there was no reason to be enemies when we could help each other instead. The reason we teamed up was simple: rock eagles. A full-grown rock eagle could match a high-rank knight in strength. The strongest person in their group was Lasaki, a mid-rank knight, same level as me. They couldn't afford to have me cause trouble while they were busy on the cliff, and I needed the resources. So they invited me to join, and I accepted. I sat by the fire but didn't eat the food they offered me. I stuck with my own dry rations. You can never be too careful with strangers. The big guy with the shield, Callum, was the talkative one. He asked me why a kid like me was alone in the magic beast forest. I told him the truth. I just broke through to a new level. I came here to train and collect some materials. Through Callum's chatting, I learned about the whole team. Lasaki, the swordsman, was the leader and main attacker, a mid-rank knight. Callum was a beginner-rank knight who handled defense. The archer's name was Ritualus, their ranged fighter. And the woman with the magic staff was Amanda, who knew some basic healing spells for treating simple wounds. Callum was over 40. The rest were all around 20. At that age, being at beginner or mid-rank was normal. So when they found out I was only about 12 and already a mid-rank knight, they assumed I was some noble family's son. As they learned more about my situation, abandoned by my family, living in a rundown manor, their attitude shifted from suspicion to sympathy. When night fell, the team split into 2 shifts for guard duty. I didn't sleep with them. I found a big tree nearby, climbed up, and made myself a simple resting spot on a thick branch. Callum watched me do it and muttered, "Young, but sharp. That's the kind of person who lives a long time." I slept lightly and woke at dawn. The morning sun filtered through the canopy in soft red streaks. After a night's rest, my fatigue was completely gone, and my left arm was almost healed. We ate quickly and headed for the cliff. When we arrived and looked down, I could see several nests built into the cliff face, the rock eagle's home. The vitality grass grew about 10 meters below the edge, right above the nests. Anyone climbing down to pick it would look like they were attacking the eagle's home. On top of that, the eagles used the grass themselves to treat their own injuries, so they guarded it fiercely. It was early morning, and the adult rock eagles had already flown out to hunt, but there were still a few young ones in the nests. They weren't as strong as the adults, not at night level, but they could fly and fight, and they were far more dangerous than ordinary birds. The plan was straightforward. Lasaki and I would rope down the cliff and pick the grass. The others would stay on top with wooden spears they'd made last night. If the young eagles attacked us, they'd throw the spears to draw the eagles away. "Let's go," Lasaki said. "Ritualus, keep watch. Callum, Amanda, eyes on the eagles. If they come at us, use the spears." I tied a rope around my waist and went down the cliff with Lasaki. I pushed off the rock wall with my feet, dropping 2 or 3 meters at a time. After a few kicks, I reached the grass. We didn't say a word. We just started picking as fast as we could. The grass was spread out across the cliff face, so we had to swing side to side on our ropes to reach more of it. Then someone knocked loose a few small rocks. The stones tumbled down the cliff and caught the attention of the young eagles below. Several of them took flight immediately and spotted the 2 of us hanging on the wall. One eagle let out a sharp screech and dove straight at us. The team on top was ready. 2 spears flew through the air. One punched right through an eagle's wing, and the wounded bird tumbled down the cliff. The second eagle dodged the spear aimed at it and pulled back, circling high above us. Then it started screaming, a long, piercing cry. "That's bad," Lasaki said immediately. "It's calling the adults. We need to get up now. When the grown eagles come back, it'll be too late." I didn't waste a second. I grabbed every piece of vitality grass within reach, shoved it into my pack, and hauled myself up the rope with both hands. 4 or 5 breaths later, I was over the edge. Lasaki was right behind me. Nobody stopped to talk. The 3 on top had already turned to run. We all sprinted into the thick forest together. We barely had time to catch our breath before we heard it. Eagle cries in the distance, loud and furious. The adults were coming home, but it was too late for them. We were already deep in the trees, safe and gone. We stopped in a quiet part of the forest after our escape from the cliff. Once we were sure the eagles weren't following, everyone let out a long breath and then burst out laughing. We'd made it. Lasaki and I emptied our packs and counted the vitality grass. 132 pieces total. Split 5 ways, that was 26 pieces each. At the guild's exchange rate, 10 gold marks per piece. Each of us would earn 260 gold marks. One trip, and we'd made what an ordinary family earns in 10 years. No wonder everyone was grinning. We divided everything equally, as agreed. There were 2 extra pieces, and I let the team keep them without fuss. It was a small thing, but I could tell it earned me some goodwill. Lasaki asked if we should head back to town together or keep hunting. Callum, the experienced one, spoke up right away. We've done well enough. Our packs are almost full from the last 2 days. Don't get greedy. Let's go back. The others nodded. Everyone respected the old man's judgment. Then they all looked at me. I've only been in the forest 1 day, I said. I'm not ready to leave yet. Let's part ways here. You head back to town. I'll keep going deeper. Lasaki wished me well. Take care of yourself. If we cross paths again, let's work together. The others said their goodbyes too, and I could see they were worried about me going alone. They were good people. Parting now means we'll meet again on better terms, I said. Take care, all of you. Then I turned and walked into the deeper forest. We'd come together because of shared interest, cooperated well, and now it was time to go our separate ways. That was the best outcome for strangers. As I went further in, ordinary animals disappeared almost completely. Everything I encountered now was a magic beast, though mostly low-rank ones that weren't worth much. I only killed the ones that attacked me first. The rest I left alone. I wandered from morning until evening without finding anything valuable. My luck from yesterday seemed to have run out. But that was normal. Life isn't a story where the hero stumbles into treasure at every turn. I did spot a few high-rank beasts along the way, but those were far beyond what I could fight. I quietly circled around each one. In the novels from my past life, the main character always finds some amazing opportunity when they enter a forest. Jump off a cliff, find a hidden cave, discover a legendary technique. I hadn't found anything like that. Should I go find a cliff and jump? I shook my head and pushed the silly thought away. By sunset, I managed to kill a low-rank beast that looked like a rabbit but had sharp fangs and a nasty temper. I roasted it for dinner without any guilt. After eating, I built a fire on the ground but didn't sleep beside it. Instead, I climbed a tall tree, found a thick branch with plenty of leaves for cover, leaned back against the trunk, and began my breathing practice. Night fell, and the forest came alive. Beasts that hid during the day started moving. Some passed right under my tree. The campfire below didn't scare them at all. Their movement kept breaking my concentration. Then I noticed something strange. There were too many beasts on the move tonight, and they were all heading in the same direction, hurrying like they had somewhere to be. If they were just hunting for food, they wouldn't be moving this recklessly. Another beast ran past below me, going the same way as all the others. Curiosity got the better of me. I climbed down, put out my fire, and followed. I walked for about half an hour before I heard growling up ahead. I slowed down, looked around carefully, then found a tall tree and climbed up to get a view. What I saw amazed me. Dozens of beasts had gathered in a clearing. High-rank magic beasts, low-rank ones, and even ordinary animals. None of them were fighting. They just sat there together, peaceful and still, as if they were waiting for something. I looked more carefully and saw it. In front of them was a cluster of flowers, not yet open, giving off faint wisps of magic energy. What kind of flower could attract this many beasts and keep them from tearing each other apart? I had no idea. There were far too many creatures down there for me to even think about getting close. But I decided to wait and watch from my tree. Maybe after the flowers opened, the beasts would fight over them, and I could scavenge something from the chaos. More beasts kept arriving, though none ranked higher than high rank. Whatever this plant was, it seemed to only matter to creatures at that level or below. Time passed slowly. Under the moonlight, the flower buds seemed to glow, growing brighter as midnight approached. Then, softly, pop, 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 the flowers bloomed one by one. The beast's eyes burned with desire. But what happened next surprised me completely. There was no fighting. The beasts had arranged themselves by rank. The high-rank beasts sat closest to the flowers. Behind them were the mid- and low-rank beasts. And at the very edge, the ordinary animals that hadn't evolved yet. The high-rank beasts went first. Each one walked up, gently bit off a single flower, and left. Then the mid and low-rank beasts took their turn. Every single creature took just one flower and walked away. No greed. No violence. The battle I expected never came. I watched in disbelief as every beast calmly took its share and left. So much for my plan to swoop in after a big fight and grab the scraps. There was no fight. These magic beasts were more polite than most people I'd met. As the crowd thinned out, I decided to follow one of the beasts to figure out what the flowers actually did. I picked a low-rank antelope-like creature and trailed it from a distance. Once it felt safe, it swallowed the flower whole. About a minute later, its energy surged. Right before my eyes, it jumped from low rank all the way to high rank. My heart started racing. A flower that could make beasts advance in rank. That would be worth a fortune. I rushed back to the clearing. But when I got there, I noticed some of the ordinary animals that had eaten the flowers had evolved into low-rank magic beasts. That made me pause. Maybe it wasn't a rank-advancing herb at all. Maybe it helped creatures break through the limits of their species. For beasts, rank-ups usually just came from eating enough over time, unless they hit their species ceiling. These flowers seemed to shatter that ceiling. But what would they do to a human? I had no idea, and I wasn't about to test it on myself. The beasts were thinning out. I stepped into the open, hand on my sword, and walked toward the remaining flowers. The animals around me watched, but didn't attack. Maybe they sensed my strength, or maybe they just didn't want to fight near the flowers. I picked 3 blooms, tucked them away, and backed off slowly. The remaining animals each grabbed 1 flower and disappeared into the darkness. No fighting, no aggression, just like all the others. Once I was far enough away, I climbed a tree and waited for every last creature to leave. While picking the flowers, I had noticed something. The herb garden looked too neat to be natural. The plants were spaced in a pattern. This had been planted by someone. A cultivated garden, now long abandoned. That got me thinking. Whoever planted these herbs was probably a mage. If I searched the area, maybe I'd find something they left behind. By dawn, the beasts were all gone. I climbed down and started looking around. Near a massive tree, I found scratch marks on the bark, clear signs that someone had lived here. Then my foot broke through a rotten plank hidden under fallen leaves. A shaped, cut board, definitely made by human hands. The ground near the big tree was slightly raised. I pieced it together. There had been a wooden cabin here once. It had collapsed and rotted away over the years, buried under layers of dead leaves. I wasn't leaving empty-handed. I used my sword as a shovel and started digging. Bit by bit, buried objects appeared, mostly everyday items, nothing valuable. Then I found a skeleton, the cabin's owner, dead for who knows how long. It all made sense now. The owner died, the cabin rotted, and the herb garden grew wild. As for why the beasts lined up so politely to take their share, that was probably a habit the owner had trained into them while alive. Magic beasts live long lives, so the habit simply carried on even after the owner was gone. I looked at the skeleton more closely and noticed something on one of its finger bones, a ring set with a gemstone. I picked it up and wiped off the dirt. It gleamed like new, not a speck of rust or decay. Could this be a dimensional ring? A storage ring? That would explain why the cabin had nothing valuable in it. The owner must have kept everything important inside the ring. I pushed my battle energy into the ring, and instantly I could feel a space inside it. It was real. A dimensional ring. About 10 cubic meters of storage space. I refined it quickly, binding it to myself. Then I checked what was inside. Several books, a few dozen elemental crystals, a magic staff, some black robes, and various personal items. I could hardly contain my excitement. Just the elemental crystals alone were incredible. 1 crystal was worth 100 gold marks. I only needed 5 to pay for the Night Academy. And the ring itself? Something like this was worth around 1,000 crystals, and you almost never found one for sale. Only grand mages could make them, and the space element crystals needed to craft them were extremely rare. I put my entire backpack into the ring. My trip to the magic beast forest had paid off far beyond what I'd hoped. I looked down at the skeleton on the ground and paused for a moment. "Well, I did dig you up," I said quietly. "The least I can do is put you back." I buried the bones where I'd found them. It felt right, a small repayment for the ring and everything else the old mage had left behind. My haul from the forest had gone far beyond what I'd dreamed of. There was no reason to stay any longer. I headed back toward the small town. Before leaving the forest, I took my backpack out of the dimensional ring and put it on my shoulders. No need for anyone to know I had a storage ring. That would only invite trouble. I sorted out the items I planned to sell, paid 2 copper marks at the town gate, and walked in. As I passed through, I couldn't help envying the gate tax business. If I owned a town, I could just sit back and collect money all day. But something was different. The town was much busier than before. When I'd left 2 days ago, this place had been a quiet little border settlement without even a proper name. Now, people filled the streets. Something had happened. I headed straight to the Adventurers Guild. The hall was packed, even more crowded than the streets outside. I stayed alert. I went to the trading counter and laid out my goods: 26 vitality grass, 2 jungle deer antlers, and the 3 mystery flowers I'd picked. A plump middle-aged merchant with a curled mustache handled my sale. His eyes lit up when he saw the vitality grass. "Selling everything?" he asked. "Yes, all gold marks." He started counting. 26 vitality grass, 312 gold marks. 2 jungle deer antlers, 40. And, well now, this is a bloodline flower. Low rank, but still quite rare. I'll price it at 200. Total, 552 gold marks. Satisfactory? I was a little surprised. The vitality grass price had shifted a bit, but the rest seemed fair. I nodded, but I was curious. What does the bloodline flower do? The merchant kept a straight face, though I suspect he regretted offering 200. He could tell I hadn't known what I had. Still, he explained professionally. Bloodline flowers can improve a magic beast's natural talent. They're valuable to anyone who raises magical creatures. Yours are low rank, so 200 is already a generous price. I kept my expression flat and nodded. Let's finish the trade. He counted out 5 rolls of gold marks, 100 each, plus 52 loose coins. 552 total. I'd watched him count, so I didn't bother recounting. I stuffed everything into my backpack. Before leaving, I asked about the crowds. The merchant was happy to talk. "Oh, that? The daughter of Marquis Ferdinand, a young woman named Serafina, had a falling out with her father. She just came of age and refused to be used as a political marriage tool. She's declared herself a pioneer knight and chosen this area, near the magic beast forest, as her territory to develop. She's already sent people to survey the forest. When word got out, adventurers and merchants came rushing in, hoping to get a head start. The guild is planning to expand. Other merchants are buying up shop space. Land prices in town have already gone up. Once she starts building a proper territory, there'll be plenty of work for everyone. Hired adventurers, suppliers, builders. It's a rare opportunity. I walked out of the guild hall and looked at the bustling streets. 2 days. That's all it took for this place to transform. Then an idea hit me. What if I bought a shop here? In my past life, real estate was one of the best investments you could make. Location was everything, and this town's location was about to get very valuable. Right now it sat on the edge of the magic beast forest, which scared most people away. But once a noble territory was established deeper in the forest, the town would become a safe zone. Prices would skyrocket. I couldn't let go of the idea. Even if I didn't have time to run a shop myself, I could rent it out. Being a landlord sounded pretty good to me. The cheapest area would be East Street, closest to the forest, separated from the wild by just a wall. People avoided it because a magic beast could wander in at any time. But that wouldn't be a problem once Serafina's territory was up and running. I headed east. Along the way, I noticed other merchants with the same idea. Sharp noses, all of them. Business people always smell opportunity first. East Street used to be rough and lawless, but today it was strangely quiet. The town's ruling family, the Evans Viscounts, must have cleaned things up. Safety first, then business follows. As I walked the street, I spotted a familiar face. It was Callum, the shield-carrying uncle from the adventurer team I'd worked with 2 days ago. "Hey, Uncle Callum, what a coincidence, running into you here," I called out. He turned around and broke into a smile when he saw me. "Keqi, good to see you, my friend. What an honor to meet again. What brings you to East Street?" I asked. "If you need a guide around here, I can help." It turned out Callum was a local. He'd been living on East Street for years. As a knight, he could handle himself even in a rough neighborhood. When I told him I wanted to buy a shop, he thought for a moment, then said, "If you trust me, I know a place I can recommend." "Really? Take me there." He led me to the far end of East Street, almost outside the street entirely. I could hear the clanging of metal from inside. A blacksmith shop. That surprised me. A blacksmith shouldn't have trouble staying in business right now. With a noble coming to develop the area, iron tools and weapons would be in high demand. A shop like this should be a gold mine. Blake, get out here, Callum shouted. Didn't you say you wanted to sell your shop? No answer came, just more hammering. Callum walked in and headed for the back workshop. I stayed in the front. I didn't want to barge into a craftsman's workspace uninvited. That's a quick way to make a bad first impression. A minute later, Callum came back dragging a stubborn-looking old man. This was Blake, the shop's owner. Callum introduced us right away. Blake, this is the buyer I found for you. You've been worried about nobles taking your shop by force, right? Keqi here is technically a noble, but he's nothing like the others. If he buys your shop, I'm sure he'll keep you on as his blacksmith. You can keep doing what you love. After some conversation, I learned Blake's story. He'd run this shop most of his life. In his youth, he'd been an adventurer, but his talent was limited, only a beginner-rank knight. After some bad luck, he gave up adventuring and settled here. Now he had a son, and the two of them ran the shop together. His strength had faded with age. He couldn't even hold his beginner knight level anymore. That weakness made him a target. When news spread about a noble developing the area, land prices shot up. Some merchants, backed by minor nobles, came and tried to force Blake to sell cheap. They offered 1,000 gold marks for a shop worth 3,000. When Blake refused, they sent thugs to pressure him. Blake wanted to sell, but at a fair price and to someone who wouldn't bully him. That's where I came in. Of course, buying this shop meant I might have to deal with whatever noble was behind those merchants. I told Blake I wanted to look into who they were before committing. Blake appreciated that. He looked at me seriously, not underestimating me despite my age. Are you really willing to take on this shop? The merchants behind this have noble backing. Aren't you worried? I'm interested, I said, and I'd like to keep you working here. But first, tell me more about these merchants. Blake told me they'd given him a final deadline, noon today, so they'd be showing up soon. I decided to wait. While we waited, we settled on the price. 2,800 gold marks for the shop. I'd hire Blake and his son for 100 gold marks per year, 60 for Blake, 40 for his son, starting with a 5-year contract. I pulled 33 elemental crystals from my dimensional ring, 28 for the shop, 5 for their wages. Both Blake and Callum froze when they saw the crystals, and when I stored the signed contract inside the ring right in front of them, their shock turned to understanding. A dimensional ring meant I wasn't some helpless kid. I had real resources. Blake bowed gratefully. Thank you, boss. Thank you. He showed me around the whole shop after that. The front had shelves stocked with iron goods, farm tools, kitchen knives, swords, shields, arm guards. After costs, the shop earned about 200 gold marks a year, mostly from selling everyday tools to common folk. Thin margins. But once the noble pioneer arrived and adventurers flooded in, revenue would multiply. A single standard iron sword sold for 20 gold marks. In the back workshop, I met Blake's son, Smith. He was in his mid-20s, quiet and awkward, not the social type. Blake handled all the business side. Smith just hammered metal. I had my shop. Now I just needed to deal with those merchants. Blake and Callum were similar in personality, both talkative and good-natured. With the shop deal settled, Blake relaxed and started sharing funny stories from years of running the business. I was in a good mood too, so I was happy to chat and get to know my new employee better. About an hour passed like that. Then a loud voice boomed from outside the shop. Old man, hand over the shop nicely, or you'll get hurt. A square-shaped fat merchant waddled through the door. He wore a single-lens monocle over his left eye, a magic tool for appraising items. Behind him stood several thugs with mean faces. Blake fired right back. You're too late, you crook. This shop isn't mine anymore. The merchant's face turned red. Who dares to steal a shop I had my eye on? Do they want to die? I heard you wanted to send me to meet the god of death, I said calmly. I'm not sure you have what it takes. He stared at me, confused. Just a kid, barely 5 feet tall, with a sword at his waist. Has your hair even grown in yet? You think you can get involved in my business without crying for mercy later? I didn't want to drag this out. My name is Keqi Braun, son of Baron Braun. That got his attention. I could practically see the gears turning in his head. He knew the Braun barony. 2 sons, the eldest sickly and cast aside, the younger one favored. If this kid in front of him really was the eldest son, and clearly healthy now, then he was looking at the future Baron Braun, not someone to offend. His expression changed instantly. A nervous smile spread across his face. "Oh, young Master Keqi, if I'd known you bought this shop, I never would have come looking for trouble. But young Master, what are you doing in a rough little town like this? And with no guards? Aren't your parents worried about you?" The moment he said, "Parents," I let my eyes go cold. "You dare mention my mother in front of me? She's dead. Did you forget that? Or do you have a death wish?" He panicked immediately, slapping his own face lightly. "Slip of the tongue. I was just so concerned about your safety." The words came out wrong. "Please forgive me. I wasn't actually angry. I knew exactly what he was doing. He was testing my identity. If I hadn't reacted to the mention of my dead mother, he'd have known I was a fake. By getting upset, I proved I was the real thing." I let my voice go flat. "So, are you here to buy something from my shop?" He blinked, then understood. I was giving him a way out. "Yes, of course. I came to buy swords for my guards. Blake's craftsmanship is excellent, so naturally I came here." "Blake," I said, "the customer wants swords. Go pick out a few good ones." Blake brought over several standard iron swords. I picked one up and gave it a casual swing. The blade hummed in the air. "These are fine weapons. 30 gold marks each." The merchant winced. "Other shops sell them for 20. These are superior blades. You won't find this quality elsewhere. Unless you don't want to buy, I'll buy. I'll take one." He reached for the sword in my hand. I didn't give it to him. His hand hung in the air awkwardly. He looked at my face, gritted his teeth, and said, "Two. I'll take two." "Wonderful. Thank you for your business." I smiled warmly and handed him the sword. Blake pulled out a second one. The merchant paid 60 gold marks with a pained expression and turned to leave. "Come again anytime," I called after him cheerfully. I heard him stumble outside. His footsteps got faster. That was the power of a noble title. No fighting, no bloodshed. If I hadn't been a baron's son, this would have turned into a brawl. I could have handled his thugs, but a peaceful solution was always better. With the shop secured and the threat gone, I told Blake to keep running things the same way as before. I left him 20 elemental crystals as emergency funds. In just one day, I'd spent 53 crystals total. The ring's original owner had left 68. I was down to 15. I needed to be more careful with money from now on. The thought made me picture Lizzie and her penny-pinching ways, guarding that savings jar like her life depended on it. I couldn't help but smile. Maybe she'd been right all along. With everything wrapped up in town, I hired a horse carriage and headed home. The trip had been short, but far more rewarding than I'd ever expected. With nothing else to do during the ride, I pulled out the books from the dimensional ring and started reading. There weren't many. After sorting them, I found a herb guide, basic stuff about common plants, meant for beginner mages. Still useful enough to memorize. Then I found one titled Universal Method of Magic Condensation, and my heart nearly jumped out of my chest. I'd been planning to search for exactly this kind of material at the Knight Academy, and here it was, sitting in a dead man's ring the whole time. Another book contained some low-level spells, fireballs, water spheres, wind blades, simple magic across different elements. Beginner stuff, but exactly what I needed. The rest were the mage's personal notes and experiment records. Most of them focused on magic beast bloodline awakening. That seemed to have been his specialty. I was happily flipping through the pages when the carriage jerked hard. The driver had pulled the reins. I almost slammed into the window but caught myself just in time. Before I could ask what happened, I heard shouting from outside. "Bandits!" I stepped out and stood on the carriage beam, looking down. It wasn't quite the fierce ambush I'd expected. About a dozen ragged, starving people holding farm tools, refugees, not real bandits. But their leader was different. He wore a black robe. No battle energy coming off him, so he wasn't a knight. That meant he was a mage. A mage leading highway robbery? That put me on guard. The driver came over, trying to calm me down. "Sir, it's just refugees blocking the road. I pass through here often. Give them a few copper marks and they'll let us through." "Have you seen that man in the black robe before?" I asked. The driver looked and shook his head. "No. Usually it's just desperate people. I've never seen anyone dressed like that." I thought for a moment. "Go talk to him. If they just want some money, give it to them. These are people with hard lives. No need to make trouble." The driver walked over to negotiate. I kept my hand on my sword hilt. Something felt wrong. That black-robed man gave me a deep, instinctive feeling of unease. I was right. Before the driver could even finish speaking, the mage kicked him hard. The driver flew through the air, hit the ground rolling, and screamed in pain. I drew my sword instantly, eyes locked on the mage. He didn't hesitate either. He started chanting and launched a fireball straight at my face. I jumped off the carriage and rolled on the ground to break my fall. The fireball sailed past, hit a tree beside the road, and exploded in a burst of sparks. The tree turned black and charred. The power was decent, but not overwhelming. I could take this guy. I charged forward. Draw slash, I shouted, swinging at his midsection. It was a technique meant to overwhelm through speed and intimidation. The mage didn't react in time. He clearly hadn't expected me to counterattack so fast. My blade cut across his body. I spun around, ready to follow up, when I heard his raspy voice. That's not fair. You have a sword, but you yelled draw slash. You cheat. He didn't finish the sentence. I brought my sword down in a finishing strike, and he collapsed. I flicked the blood off my blade and sheathed it. Then I crouched down and used the scabbard to push back his hood. Underneath was a middle-aged man with a ruined, scarred face. Whatever had happened to him, it explained why a mage had ended up robbing travelers on the road. But he was dead now, so I'd never know his story. The refugees scattered and ran the moment their leader fell. They were just desperate people with no useful information, so I let them go. The driver managed to get up on his own. His injuries weren't serious. I searched the mage's body. His money pouch had over 100 gold marks plus some silver and copper. I dumped it all into my ring. He also carried a low-level magic staff. Nothing else. The man had been poor. No wonder he'd turned to robbery. I dragged the body into the trees. The stray dogs would find it soon enough. Back in the carriage, I started thinking. Refugees blocking roads was common. The driver had confirmed that. But a mage leading them? That was strange. Even a desperate mage wouldn't normally do something this risky for so little reward. Unless someone had hired him, and the mage hadn't tried to rob me. The moment he saw me, he'd attacked. That meant I was his target. But who would want me dead? Before my breakthrough, I'd spent years locked away in that crumbling manor. Lizzie did all the shopping. I barely saw anyone. I hadn't offended a soul. Yet someone had sent this man after me. It was planned. The refugees were just cover, hired on the spot. Even if I'd caught and questioned them, they wouldn't have known anything. That's why I hadn't bothered stopping them. I shook my head. Too little information. I couldn't figure it out. But whoever was behind this would try again. I needed to stay alert from now on. On the way home, I stopped at a market in our territory and bought some meat, warm clothes, and sweets for Lizzie. She'd been living on almost nothing for years, too careful with money to even buy her favorite treats. Now that I had real income, I wasn't going to let her suffer anymore. Lizzie had come into my life when I was 9. The old butler saw how quiet and lonely I was, with no one my age around, so he bought a little girl from a servant dealer. That was Lizzie. From that day on, she took care of everything. My food, my clothes, my daily life. When I got back to the manor, she wasn't home, probably out shopping. I put the food away and sat down under the pavilion in the courtyard with the book on magic condensation. I read through the method several times until I understood it completely, then started trying it out. Lizzie came back while I was practicing, but she knew our unspoken rule, don't disturb me during training or reading. So she quietly went about her own business. After a few attempts, I could feel the magic particles in the air drawing toward my body, flowing in with each breath. It was working. I had the talent to become a mage. But then I hit a problem. Where should I store the magic power? In this world, both battle energy and magic power are normally stored in the same place. The chest area, what I recognized from my past life as the middle dantian. Battle energy already filled that space in my body. Magic power and battle energy don't mix. They clash and reject each other. That's why nobody in this world can be both a knight and a mage at the same time. But what about the lower dantian? In my past life's Taoist teachings, there were 3 energy centers. If battle energy sat in the middle one, maybe magic could go in the lower one. I decided to try. I guided a tiny thread of magic energy downward, past the middle dantian, into the lower area. The energy scattered and dissolved. But nothing hurt. So I kept going, feeding more and more magic into that space. The energy built up slowly, and then, something like a lock breaking open. A tremor shook through my lower abdomen. It felt like a thunderclap inside my body. The lower dantian opened up completely. The magic energy pooling inside it began to condense into real, usable magic power. I could feel it, a second well of energy, separate from my battle energy. I couldn't help shouting, from now on, I'm a close combat mage. Training both paths would be slower, of course. But once a mage reached the level of Grand Magus, their body would resonate with the surrounding magic particles constantly, essentially training every moment of every day. That was a long way off, though. Right now, I was barely a trainee mage, not even ranked. Night training used breathing techniques. Mage training used meditation. I couldn't do both at once, but I wasn't worried about speed. My night training had no bottlenecks, just steady accumulation until the next breakthrough came naturally. I practiced until the magic in my lower dantian was stable and stopped leaking, then opened my eyes. Lizzie appeared immediately, bouncing with excitement. Young master, when did you get back? Why did you buy so much food? Don't you know we have no income? Or, did you actually make money out there? She wasn't upset about the spending. In fact, she looked thrilled. The sweets were definitely doing their job. Your young master has struck it rich, I said, grinning. No more penny pinching, little girl. Eat what you want, drink what you want. I've got plenty of money now, she said, okay, with her mouth, but her face said she didn't believe a word. I'd made big promises before. She and I weren't really like master and servant anyway, more like brother and sister. She talked back to me whenever she felt like it, and I never minded. Well, since you bought black pork, I'll make pork stew with potatoes for dinner, she said, changing the subject before I could brag more. Make it early, I told her. After dinner, come to my room. I have something to tell you. Oh, and don't forget to eat those sweets. I bought them just for you. She nodded and carried the pork into the kitchen. With time to spare before dinner, I picked up the book on basic spells. From it, I learned how magic actually works. When a mage casts a spell, they chant to focus their mind, then use their internal magic power to connect with the magic particles in the environment. The chanting helps the mage concentrate enough to pull the right type of energy together and shape it into the desired effect. A fireball, for example, works by using your internal magic to grab fire element particles from the air, form them into a ball, then guide it at your target with mental focus. Your internal magic is like a key that unlocks the elements around you. Different people have different affinities with different elements, which is why mages specialize: fire mages, water mages, and so on. Gifted mages with strong mental power can skip the chanting entirely and cast spells instantly, because their minds are powerful enough to command the elements directly. After dinner, Lizzie cleaned up and came to my room. You wanted to see me, young master? Come here, I said. I have a book on magic training. Read through it a few times, then try condensing magic power. Let's see if you have the talent. Lizzie had been with me since I was 9. The old butler had bought her to keep me company. When I was learning to read, write, and practice noble etiquette, I always made her sit beside me and learn too. She turned out to be brilliant. She picked things up faster than I did, and I had a whole past life of memories to draw on. A natural-born genius. I'd already tried teaching her night training, but she had almost no talent for it. After a long time, she'd only reached trainee level, so I wanted to see if magic might be her path instead. If magic talent was tied to mental strength, then someone as sharp as Lizzie should do well. I'd kept one of the magic staffs from my trip for her. As for myself, I planned to skip staffs entirely and focus on strengthening my mental power until I could cast spells without chanting. That was the only way to make battle mage fighting work. Surprise your enemy with instant magic in the middle of a sword fight. While I was lost in thought about future combat styles, Lizzie had already put down the book, crossed her legs on the bed, and started trying. I watched in amazement. The magic particles in the air rushed toward her like they'd been waiting for an invitation. They poured into her body and converted into magic power at an incredible rate. Within minutes, the total magic stored inside her had already surpassed mine. I could only shake my head. Of course, her learning talent came from powerful mental strength. Strong mental power meant strong sensitivity to magic. Give her the right method and she'd take off. She practiced for over an hour before the mental fatigue hit. She opened her eyes, beaming. Young master, I think I became a mage. Not think, I said. According to the book, you're a trainee mage now. Keep building your magic reserves, and you'll rank up fast. I don't even know where your ceiling is. Practice every night before bed through meditation. Stop when you feel tired. Never push past that point. You'll damage your mind and body. Got it, she said happily. I pulled out the basic spell book and the magic staff from my ring. This book has low-level spells. Memorize them and practice when you can. Use this staff, it'll help you cast more easily. Then I handed her 100 gold marks. I earned some money on this trip. Take this and spend it. No more scrimping. You're not keeping any for yourself? I have plenty more. This is just a small part. Buy whatever you want. Her eyes lit up. She grabbed the coins and bounced off to her room. A little while later, I heard sounds from the backyard. I went to investigate and found Lizzie standing there with the magic staff, firing off spells. Her first fireball was small and fizzled out mid-flight, not enough power behind it. But her second one was bigger, and it flew straight and strong without shrinking. A proper fireball. Then she just kept going. Fireball after fireball, like a child with a new toy, until she'd burned through all her magic power. She turned around and jumped when she saw me standing in the doorway. Young master, how long have you been there? You scared me. I'd been watching since her second cast. Honestly, I was stunned. I'd memorized the same spells, but I'd need serious practice before I could actually pull them off. She'd read the book once and was already casting successfully. Her magic talent was clearly higher than mine. Practice different elements over the next few days, I told her. Try fire, water, wind, everything in the book. Find out which one suits you best, then focus on that. Train until you can cast without chanting. That's when you'll really be able to protect yourself. Yes, young master, she nodded firmly. I turned to go back inside, then stopped. Something had been nagging at me since the road ambush. One more thing. While I was away, did anyone come to the manor? Anything unusual happen? She thought for a moment. Old butler Charles came by, but he wasn't alone. He brought a middle-aged man with him. That surprised me. The old butler had been sent to manage family business. He shouldn't have had time to visit. And who was this stranger? What did the butler say? What did the man look like? The butler came to tell you that Baron Braun wants you to come home for the Grace Day family dinner. The man with him carried a sword, probably a guardian knight. He didn't say much. Oh, but I remember now. He had a scar on his forehead, hidden under his hair. I only noticed it when he turned to leave. He was mean, she continued. When I told the butler you weren't home, that man got aggressive and demanded to know where you'd gone. I didn't think much of it, so I told him you went to the magic beast forest. Her face suddenly went pale. Young master, I gave away where you were. Are you angry with me? I stepped forward and ruffled her hair. It's fine. Me going out isn't some big secret. Don't worry about it. Go get some rest. She nodded and left. But after she was gone, I stood there thinking. The old butler's visit, the scarred stranger who wanted to know my location, and then a mage ambushing me on the road back from the forest. The timing lined up a little too neatly. Someone had sent that black-robed mage after me, and now I had a better idea of how they'd known where to find me. That night, I lay awake thinking. My father, Baron Braun, the man who abandoned me years ago, suddenly wanted me at the Grace Day family dinner. Why would he care about me now? Who was the scarred knight that came with the old butler? What did he want? And then, on my very first trip outside, a mage tried to kill me on the road home. Was someone paying him to do it? I turned the pieces over in my mind. The Baron's invitation probably had to do with me turning 12. At that age, noble children are expected to attend the Royal Knight Academy in the capital. It's technically an education program, but the kingdom's real purpose is recruitment. Every year, graduates get pulled into the Royal Army. The academy is basically a training ground for future soldiers. Even if the Baron hadn't invited me, I'd planned to go back next spring anyway. I needed something from him, a noble invitation letter. That's your entry ticket to the academy. Merchants who want their children in have to buy these letters from nobles, and the kingdom limits how many each noble can issue based on their rank. That makes them expensive and hard to get. Some nobles even hold auctions for theirs. As for the knight who came with the butler, I didn't have enough information yet. He'd traveled with the old butler, so he was probably someone from the Baron's territory. Maybe one of the Baron's personal guard knights. I'd have to look for him at the family dinner. Someone wanted me dead, and I didn't know who. That feeling of being in the dark, of being a target without knowing where the arrow would come from. It was deeply uncomfortable. But worrying wouldn't solve anything. The only real answer was to get stronger. In this world, personal power decided everything. That's why nobles stayed on top. They controlled the strongest fighters. I went to my room, sat cross-legged, and began training my battle energy using the family breathing technique. After the past few days of combat experience, my night level had stabilized. Time to push forward again. The next morning, I woke early and went to the pavilion in the backyard to practice magic condensation. I'd settled on a schedule: battle energy training at night, magic training in the morning. Both paths, moving forward together. After an hour of meditation, I got up and moved to the open ground to practice my sword. The family style had few moves, but they worked hand in hand with the breathing technique, so constant drilling was the only way to master them. I also dug into my past life memories and pulled out some Tai Chi sword forms. Without a matching breathing method, they weren't very powerful on their own. But after experimenting, I managed to blend a few defensive moves into my regular fighting style, mainly for redirecting force. In this world, sword techniques were built for raw killing power. Adding ways to deflect and survive seemed smart. Now that I was training both knight and mage paths, I started thinking about how to combine magic with swordplay in actual combat. That wouldn't happen overnight. It would take endless practice. For now, the priority was becoming a proper mage. While I was deep in sword practice, Lizzie appeared. "Young master, breakfast is ready." I hadn't even noticed the time. We sat across from each other at the table. Lizzie suddenly remembered something. "Young master, the ground beans in the garden should be ready to harvest." "Potatoes," I corrected her automatically. "They're called potatoes. This world called them ground beans." But I could never stop myself from using the word I knew from my past life. Potatoes grew easily and produced a lot, which made them a staple food here. Hearing they were ready made me genuinely happy. After the Baron cut us off, Lizzie and I had lived on a few hundred gold marks. That should have lasted a lifetime if we'd been careful, but I'd spent too freely. Within a few years, we were down to a few dozen coins. This last trip had burned through the rest. If the forest hadn't paid off so well, we'd have been in real trouble. "Let's dig them up after breakfast," I said. I'd planted them on a whim, stuffing sprouted potatoes into the old flower garden to save money on food. The soil turned out to be surprisingly rich. The potatoes grew big and round, some over a kilogram each. Lizzie and I had eventually converted the entire flower bed into a potato field. It wasn't large, maybe 100 square meters, but it produced around 2,000 kilograms, enough to feed us through the whole winter. That little experiment saved us dozens of silver marks. Lizzie checked on those potatoes almost every day. Hearing they were finally ready, she ate her breakfast faster than usual. When I'd first arrived in this world, I'd wanted to explore and see everything. But my ruined body had crushed that dream. So I'd settled for a quieter plan: clear some farmland, grow some food, live out a peaceful life. Planting potatoes had been one of my few small joys. But now everything was changing. My body was healed. My strength was growing. And that restless feeling in my chest, the one I'd buried for years, was stirring again. While I didn't know it at the time, things were happening behind the scenes at my father's castle. My stepmother Isabella was furious. She'd sent someone to deal with me, the scarred knight named Hole, who had come with her as part of her dowry when she married my father. He was her personal guardian knight. The mage on the road had been her doing. When the assassination failed, she ordered Hole to try again. Either kill me quietly, or at least make sure I stayed sick long enough for her son Ron to grow up and secure the inheritance. Meanwhile, my little half-brother Ron, only 8 years old, had no idea about any of this. He was practicing noble etiquette with old butler Charles, excitedly asking about me. He hadn't seen me in years and wanted to send me gifts. He even wished he could visit, but our father wouldn't let him leave the castle. He was just a child who missed his older brother. Charles, the old butler, knew everything. He'd served the Braun family for 2 generations, watching my father grow up, then watching over us. He'd already told my father about Isabella's schemes, a risky move for a servant. All he could do now was hope the Baron would put a stop to it. And my father? He was standing at a high window in the castle, staring in the direction of Isabella's chambers, his face dark. He knew what she'd done. When he'd heard my health had recovered, he'd been genuinely happy. But his wife's attempt to have me killed enraged him. He'd sent someone to rescue me from the mage ambush, but his man arrived too late, only to find the mage's body dumped in the woods and me already safely home. That surprised him. His sickly, abandoned eldest son had killed a mage on his own. After thinking it over, he summoned a shadow, some kind of hidden agent, and gave an order: watch over me, track anyone who means me harm, but don't interfere directly. I knew none of this. What I did know was that it was a good afternoon. Lizzie and I spent it digging up the potatoes we'd planted months ago in the old flower garden. The harvest was huge, big, round potatoes, some over a kilogram each. Enough to feed us through the whole winter. Lizzie was so happy she made up a little song. Stewed potatoes, roasted potatoes, eat until our bellies are round. Training, farming, teasing my little maid. These quiet days were simple and comfortable. But that night, something felt wrong. I sat in my bedroom on the second floor, trying to practice my battle energy, but a strange restlessness kept crawling through me. I couldn't settle into the meditation no matter how hard I tried. I opened my eyes and thought about it. Was something about to happen? The failed assassination still had no answers. Whoever sent that mage might try again. I need to keep a closer watch around the manor in the coming days. Since I couldn't train, I lit an oil lamp and pulled a book from the shelf, a collection of kingdom history I'd gathered over the years to pass the time. It was mostly biographies of royal figures, written in surprising detail. They even listed the lovers and mistresses of important nobles. I couldn't understand why the current royals allowed books like this to be printed. Wasn't it embarrassing? What I didn't realize was that in noble culture, having lovers was actually a point of pride. The more you had, the more desirable you were considered. Nobles even threw private gatherings specifically to show off their affairs. I clearly still had a lot to learn about this world's aristocracy. Around midnight, I yawned and put my book back on the shelf. I climbed into bed and blew out the oil lamp. Then I heard it, something moving fast toward the manor from outside. My mid-rank night senses picked it up easily. Enhanced hearing, enhanced smell, and in even the faintest light, I could see almost as well as in daylight. Someone was coming to attack. I grabbed my sword and drew it quietly. I folded the blankets on my bed to look like a person lying down, then hid behind the curtain beside the bed. A dark shadow leaped up to my window. It was late autumn, and the window was shut tight. A blade slipped through the window paper, flicked the latch open, and the figure slid inside without a sound. He closed the window behind him just as silently. If I'd been an ordinary person, I never would have noticed. But I wasn't ordinary. I was ready. The shadow rushed to the bed and drove his sword straight through the blankets and into the board underneath. A killing blow. He meant to finish me instantly. He froze. No resistance. No body. He realized the trick a second too late. I swung my sword with both hands from the side, aiming for his neck. He yanked his blade from the bed and blocked just in time. The clash told me everything I needed to know. He was stronger than me. A high-rank knight. One move wasn't going to work. I had to change tactics. I reached out with my left hand, clawing at his face. He leaned back instinctively to dodge. That's when I played my hidden card. A fireball formed instantly at my left palm. No chanting, no warning, and exploded right in his face. He never saw it coming. The flames scorched his skin and burned straight through his eyes before he could close them. A horrible scream tore through the night. His vision was gone. Completely. He swung his sword wildly, trying to defend himself by sound alone. But I didn't press in with the blade. Instead, I formed another fireball and sent it flying at him. He felt the heat and rolled sideways to dodge. Exactly what I was waiting for. Before he could get up, I thrust my sword into his back. The blade went clean through his body and came out the front. I felt his life draining away. He let out a quiet sigh. He couldn't understand it. His information said I was just a knight. Nobody told him I could use magic too. That mistake cost him everything. A high-rank knight, taken down because he didn't know what he was really facing. I didn't take chances. I swung once more and took his head. Only then did I breathe. I searched his body. A few gold marks, some silver. Nothing else. No storage ring, no identification. The fireball had destroyed his face completely. Young master, what happened? I heard screaming. Lizzie was at the door, holding an oil lamp, knocking frantically. I didn't want her to see the blood. It's nothing. Go back to sleep. But she pushed the door open anyway. The lamplight fell on the bloodstains across the floor. Her face went white. Young master, this. I stepped in front of her quickly. I'm fine. Look at me. Not a scratch. I turned in a full circle to prove it. She stared at me for a moment, then threw her arms around me and burst into tears. I let her cry. After a while, I patted her back gently. It's over now. Go rest. I'll clean up. She took a shaky breath and then, from somewhere deep inside, found a courage I didn't expect. I'll help you clean, young master. That surprised me. I looked at her, this tiny girl trying so hard to be brave, and I couldn't turn her down. Okay, go fetch a bucket of water. I'll take care of the body first. Then you can help me wash the floor. She hurried out, taking the lamp with her. The room went dark, but my eyes adjusted fine. I picked up the body in one hand and the head in the other, stored them in the dimensional ring, then grabbed a mop and waited. She came back struggling with a heavy bucket. By then I'd already wiped up most of the blood. She was still pale, but she scrubbed the floor without complaining until it was spotless. When it was done, I told her to go rest. Before she could answer, I headed outside to bury the body. I found a low spot in the trees not far from the manor, dug a hole, dropped everything in, and covered it up. I let out a long breath. Trouble kept finding me. The manor wasn't safe anymore. I needed to get stronger, faster. When I got back, Lizzie was waiting at the door, watching the darkness anxiously. Something warm stirred in my chest. Since awakening my past life memories at 3 years old, I'd felt disconnected from this world. Family meant nothing. My father had given up on me. I'd lived alone with my thoughts for years. But this little girl, she was the one person who made me feel like I belonged here. She ran up to me the moment she saw me. "You're back?" She grabbed my sleeve and held on tight, as if just touching me was the only thing that made her feel safe. Lizzie wouldn't let go of my arm. I needed to distract her, so I brought up winter preparations. Deep winter is coming soon. Have you figured out what supplies we need? She snapped back to reality, stammering a little. And not yet. I was waiting until you had time, so we could go to town together. Good. Tomorrow we'll go. And I have a surprise for you. A surprise? What surprise? She looked up at me, curious. I just smiled. You'll see when we get there. If I told you now, it wouldn't be a surprise, she pouted. You're just tricking me. There's probably no surprise at all. When we reached her door, she still wouldn't let go. So I gave in and went with her to her room. I told her to get in bed while I sat cross-legged on the floor beside her. It's late. Sleep. I'll be right here. She lay down but kept her eyes on me, afraid I'd leave. Her face was still pale. It hurt to see her like that. I'm not going anywhere, I said softly. After she closed her eyes, I sat quietly and thought things over. 2 assassination attempts now. The mage on the road, and tonight's intruder, a high-rank knight who snuck into my bedroom to kill me. Both came specifically for me. Who wanted me dead? My best guess was my stepmother, Isabella. She was born into the evil Count's family, his 4th daughter, but still a Count's daughter. If she wanted her son Ron to inherit the barony, removing me made perfect sense. My father was also a possibility. He'd spent a fortune trying to cure me when I was 3, but people change. If he didn't want me competing with my half-brother for the title, he might have ordered it himself. Beyond that, I couldn't think of anyone. The fat merchant from the blacksmith deal crossed my mind, but merchants don't usually pick fights with nobles. I could check on him tomorrow in town. As for my father and stepmother, I'd have to wait until the Grace Day family dinner to investigate further. I needed to stay sharp. And more than anything, I needed to get stronger. I started condensing magic power. Then I heard Lizzie's voice, shaky and tearful. "Young master, I can't sleep." She was about to cry again. I quickly changed the subject. "Can't sleep? Then sit up and practice magic with me." She sat up, crossed her legs, and we sat side by side on the bed, both pulling magic particles from the air. At first she couldn't focus, but with some guidance, she gradually settled into meditation and forgot about what had happened. We practiced through the night. By dawn, we were both wide awake. We ate a quick breakfast and set out for town. The road was busier than before, more travelers, more carts. The town was clearly growing. Lizzie rarely got to leave the manor, so every trip excited her. As we walked, she chattered about every flower, every animal, every new thing she spotted. Her cheerfulness was contagious, and my mood lightened too. We paid the entry fee and walked through the gates. The town was buzzing, vendors shouting on every corner, selling food, clothes, tools, and wild goods from the forest. Lizzie stopped at every interesting stall, examined things carefully, asked about prices, but never bought anything. Saving money, as always. I walked up beside her. "If you like something, buy it. A few small things won't cost much." She leaned in close and whispered, "I'm not really interested in buying. I'm checking prices so I know the market rates. That way nobody can cheat us later." I stared at her. This girl was sharper than I gave her credit for. We'll get the winter supplies on the way back, I said. First, let me show you your surprise. There's really a surprise? She still didn't believe me. I led her to East Street. The area had changed. Cleaner, safer, more shops and people. When we reached the blacksmith shop, I brought her inside. Young master, are you buying a sword? She asked. Not buying anything. I want you to meet someone. And this is your surprise. She looked around the shop, confused. Where's the surprise? Blake came out from behind the counter with a big smile. Boss, welcome back. Come in, sit down. Blake, how's business? Has that fat merchant come back? Business is much better than before. That merchant hasn't shown his face since the day he left. I nodded. That confirmed what I'd suspected. If the merchant had hired someone to attack me, he would have come back to snoop around or try to reclaim the shop after the hit. The fact that he'd stayed away meant he'd truly given up. One suspect eliminated. That left only the people back at the Baron's castle, my father and stepmother, as the ones most likely trying to have me killed. When Lizzie found out the blacksmith shop was ours, she lit up so brightly that last night's horror vanished from her face completely. That was all I needed to see. To get through winter properly, I decided to hunt some magic beasts for meat. Since my breakthrough, my body burned through energy much faster. My appetite had nearly doubled in just 2 days. Ordinary food wasn't enough anymore. I needed meat from magic beasts. I left Lizzie at the blacksmith shop and headed into the magic beast forest, aiming for the boulder woods. I'd heard a herd of rockhorn magic sheep lived there. They were low-rank beasts, about twice the size of regular goats, around 400 pounds each. If I could bag a few, we'd have meat for the whole winter. My dimensional ring could hold about 4 or 5 of them. I passed through the forest quickly, ignoring the predator-type beasts along the way. Their meat tasted bad. I had a clear target. An hour later, I reached the boulder woods. Massive rocks jutted from the earth in strange, beautiful shapes. Nature's artwork. But when I searched for tracks, all I found were old ones. No fresh signs of the sheep anywhere. That was strange. Had they migrated? I pushed deeper for another 2 hours, all the way to midday, and still found nothing. Not a single sheep. Something had driven them away. Going deeper was too risky. The forest got more dangerous the further in you went. I decided to loop around and head back. After leaving the boulder woods, I re-entered the dense forest, searching for anything worth hunting. Then I heard the roaring of a magic beast up ahead. I crept closer to investigate. A squad of well-equipped soldiers was fighting a massive redhorn magic bull. The thing stood nearly 3 meters tall with 2 huge red spiral horns on its head. A wild mane hung from its neck. Its legs were like pillars. Even though it was only a low-rank beast, its sheer size gave it the fighting power of a mid-rank creature. It must have weighed over 3,000 pounds. The bull was covered in wounds and bleeding heavily, but its eyes were red with rage, and it was far from finished. It charged, hooves smashing the ground. One soldier tried to dodge, but misjudged the bull's width. He cleared the horns, but the massive body clipped him. He spun through the air, hit the ground hard, and didn't move. I winced from my hiding spot. That was terrifying power. The bull turned around for another charge. But before it could move, a figure in white armor stepped forward, carrying a wide, heavy greatsword. 2 steps, a leap, and the warrior was airborne above the bull. The sword came crashing down on the bull's neck. It didn't cut through. The blade was blunt-edged, but it shattered the spine. The bull screamed and collapsed, legs twitching uselessly. It was done. The soldiers cheered and formed a perimeter, waiting for the bull to die. But the warrior in white didn't celebrate. Instead, they walked over to the fallen soldier, checked his injuries, and shook their head. The soldier was dead. Then a clear, sharp voice rang out. "Friend in the trees, how long do you plan to hide?" Caught. I stepped out calmly and walked into the open. The soldiers formed a protective circle around the white-armored warrior, weapons ready. When they saw me, a 12-year-old kid, they froze. "A child," one of them muttered. "Just passing through," I said. I heard the noise and came to look. "If I'm in the way, I'll leave." "You're not in the way," the warrior replied. "I'm just curious why a child your age is alone in the magic beast forest." That rubbed me the wrong way. What's so curious about it? There's no rule saying only adults can come here. And you don't look that old yourself. I gave her an obvious look up and down. She paused, clearly not used to being talked back to. Then she seemed to realize her question had been too blunt. She removed her helmet. The face underneath was striking. Skin like jade, sharp bright eyes full of confidence, silver hair flowing in the wind. Combined with the white armor, she looked like something out of a legend. Two words came to mind: breathtaking and fierce. I realized I was staring and felt my face go hot. I stammered out an apology. She smiled slightly at my embarrassment, then introduced herself in a gentle voice. Serafina, daughter of Marquis Ferdinand. And you are? The moment I heard that name, my mind went blank. Serafina, the pioneer knight everyone in town had been talking about. The noble who was going to develop the territory next to the magic beast forest. The woman whose arrival had turned a quiet border town upside down. She was standing right in front of me. The moment I heard the name Ferdinand, I knew who she was. The pioneer knight everyone in town had been talking about. In this world, 16 is adulthood. She looked like she'd just turned 16. I caught myself staring and quickly snapped out of it. I gave her a bow, not a very good one, since my noble etiquette was rusty at best. Keqi Braun, son of Baron Braun. I didn't love announcing my family name, but she'd been polite enough to introduce herself first. I noticed her eyebrow twitch slightly at my sloppy manners, though she was too well-bred to say anything. With introductions out of the way, the tension dropped. She sent her guards to process the dead bull while she studied me carefully. I could tell she was sensing my knight level. Something shifted in her expression, surprise, maybe even shock. She was clearly calculating. A kid my age at mid-rank knight was far beyond normal. She'd probably been a genius in her own circles, but at 12, she would have still been a trainee. I could almost see the questions forming in her head. Why hadn't anyone in noble society heard of me? A talent like this should have been famous. She must have concluded that my family was hiding me on purpose, protecting a secret weapon. She wasn't entirely wrong, though the truth was sadder than that. Nobody had hidden me. They'd just thrown me away. What brings you to the forest alone, Sir Keqi? She asked, breaking the silence. Nothing special. Winter's coming. I'm hunting meat. Would you like to join us? I'm planning to hunt more beasts as well. I thought about it for a moment and agreed. Traveling with a group meant I could relax a little instead of watching every direction at once. Once we were a team, she opened up. I'm planning to build my territory on the edge of this forest. Any advice? That caught me off guard. Why ask me? But I gave her the honest answer from my past life's knowledge. Build high walls. Store plenty of grain. She waited for more. When nothing came, she couldn't help herself. That's it. That's it. Follow those 6 words, and building a territory is simple. How big it gets depends on your ambition. In this world, military power could hold land, but what actually drew people to settle somewhere was safety and food. Guarantee those 2 things, and free citizens would come on their own. After that, a city practically built itself. She went quiet, turning those words over in her mind. I could see them sinking in. After a while, she looked at me with a new level of respect. Since I clearly wasn't interested in talking politics, she changed the subject. We lost a man fighting that bull. I'd planned to head back, but since you're with us now, let's keep hunting. She stored the packaged bull meat in her dimensional ring, then carefully placed the dead soldier's body inside as well. Then she ordered her team forward. Her squad moved in a tight formation, 2 scouts ahead, 2 on each flank, 2 guarding the rear, and 3 close around Serafina. Originally 12 members, now 11 after the bull fight. Just 16 years old, and she commanded 12 guardian knights. Her family's wealth was clearly enormous. I walked beside her, watching how her team operated. I had to admit, I was impressed. She was young, but she was serious about this. Most noble children her age sat in castles waiting to inherit titles. She'd chosen to come out here and build something from nothing. Then she played another card. I've received reliable information that white stallion magic horses have been spotted on the Green Forest Plateau to the southeast. I'm planning to organize a team to capture some alive for mounts. Would you be interested in joining? White stallions. Rare horse-type magic beasts that could run 1,000 miles in a day with incredible stamina. Nobles loved them. One duke's family had built a cavalry of 100 white stallion riders that dominated every battlefield they entered. If Serafina could get a squad of those, her territory expansion would be unstoppable. But why was she telling me this? This was valuable intelligence. You don't share something like that with a stranger you just met in the woods. My guard went up. There had to be a reason. Still, the information was useful either way. I offered something back. White stallions are fiercely protective of their young. If you want to capture them alive, find the foals first. Take the foals, set a trap, and the adults will come to you. Even though I was wary of Serafina's motives, I didn't mind answering her questions. They were just suggestions, nothing secret. When she asked again if I'd join her expedition to capture white stallions, I turned her down gently. Winter is the wrong season. White stallions don't breed in cold weather, and they migrate south to the Nellis coast to wait out winter. It's too far, not worth the trip. She looked surprised. She hadn't known about the migration. If she'd gone now, she would have found nothing. The best time is late spring, I continued. Food is plentiful then, and the mares give birth around that time. That's when you'll find foals, and that's when the trap works. I could tell she was reassessing me again. Every casual question she threw at me got a detailed, practical answer, and it caught her off guard each time. We kept walking and talking. She asked, I answered. Before long, it felt like we'd known each other for years. Then we spotted a herd of deer-type magic beasts grazing ahead. Serafina was about to order her guards to surround them, but I stopped her. They're feeding right now, their guard is up. If you rush in, they'll scatter. You'll catch a few at most. I explained a better plan. Find a path the deer would naturally run through, dig a trench, then drive them into it. Digging takes time. What if they leave before we're done? It only needs to be about a meter deep. With this many people, it'll be fast. She gave the order. Her knights used their swords as shovels, and within minutes they'd carved out a long trench. I had them sharpen wooden stakes and angle them inside the pit, then cover the whole thing loosely with branches and leaves. The guards looked at the crude trap and clearly thought it was a joke. No beast would fall for something so obvious. I didn't argue. I just positioned everyone for a two-sided drive, leaving one gap, the gap that led straight to the trench. 2 archers on the far side fired first. Their arrows struck 2 deer. The rest of the herd panicked instantly. Guards on both flanks shouted and banged their weapons, cutting off every escape route except one. The terrified deer stampeded toward the gap. Then they hit the trench. One after another, they plunged in like dumplings dropping into a pot. The pit wasn't deep enough to trap them by itself, but it was enough to make them stumble and fall onto the sharpened stakes below. Nearly the entire herd was wiped out. Only a handful escaped. The knights stared in disbelief. One of them laughed as he finished off a wounded deer. I've never seen beasts this stupid. The trap was right there in the open. One knight asked me why the deer ran straight into such an obvious trap. When you're panicking and running for your life, I said. Even a person wouldn't see it. Serafina nodded quietly at that. She understood. We kept hunting through the afternoon, using teamwork to take down more herbivore-type beasts. My share came to 3 magic deer, about 200 pounds each, plus several red-eye magic rabbits at 50 pounds apiece. Over 800 pounds of meat total, enough to fill my dimensional ring. Everything beyond that, I gave to Serafina. Under my direction, the whole process had been smooth and almost easy. The knights who'd looked down on me at the start were completely won over by the end. As the sky darkened, we headed back to town. When it was time to part ways, every knight came up to say goodbye personally. Serafina stood in front of me and held out her hand. Sir Keqi, let's be friends. I hope we can work together again. I looked at her outstretched hand. Despite being a marquis's daughter, she had no arrogance about her. She was straightforward and genuine, someone worth knowing. I shook her hand. I'd like that. We both had a feeling, I think, that this wouldn't be the last time we met. After we parted, I headed back to the blacksmith shop. Lizzie was standing at the door, waiting for me. Something warm spread through my chest. Having someone wait for you to come home. That was a feeling I'd gone without for too long. After saying goodbye to Blake, Lizzie and I headed home. She'd spent the day buying winter supplies while I was hunting, so we were well stocked. I decided not to leave the manor again until winter was over. Instead, I'd focus entirely on training to push my level higher. The stronger I got, the safer I'd be. Back at the manor, I pulled some magic beast meat from my dimensional ring for dinner. Without anything like a refrigerator, the ring was perfect. Time didn't pass inside it, so the meat stayed fresh forever. I just took out what we needed each day. Before letting Lizzie cook, I taught her a few recipes from my past life. When she saw me handling food and giving cooking instructions, her jaw dropped. A young master who knew how to cook? The shock on her face lasted through the entire meal. Winter came fast in this world. One cold wind, and every leaf was gone. But the days were peaceful. I trained, teased Lizzie, and enjoyed the quiet. It was nothing like my past life, slaving away for decades just to afford a concrete box to live in. With plenty of food and my body fully healed, I grew over 10 centimeters in just 3 months. I was close to 1.70 m now. In this world, ordinary people averaged about 160. Nobles, with their better nutrition, averaged around 170. I was just hitting that mark at 12. I'd probably top out around 175. I'd missed my best growing years being sick. My night training hit a ceiling. I'd reached high rank knight, the maximum the family breathing technique could support. My father was also stuck at high rank for the same reason. Or maybe he'd just been lazy at the academy. Either way, I need a better breathing method to go further. On the magic side, I'd reached mid-rank mage. A bit behind my knight level, but solid progress. I could now instant cast several low-level spells without chanting. Combined with high-rank knight combat, I could catch even a grand knight off guard if I timed it right. Lizzie, meanwhile, had reached high-rank mage. She'd blown past me completely. The condensation method we'd gotten from that dead mage's books wasn't anything special, which limited us both, but her natural talent more than made up for it. She'd memorized every low-level spell in the book and could instant cast all of them. On my advice, she still carried the magic staff as a disguise. Let people think she needed it to cast. A hidden advantage was always better. With the Grace Day family dinner approaching, I told Lizzie to start packing. Pack everything valuable. Clothes, daily supplies, all of it. After the family dinner, we're heading straight to the capital. We're not coming back. The dimensional ring was empty now. All the meat had been eaten over winter. Plenty of room for luggage. Lizzie, of course, tried to pack absolutely everything she could get her hands on. Pots, blankets, tools, things we'd never use again. You don't need to bring all that, I said. We have money now. We can buy whatever we need in the capital, but young master, things in the capital will be expensive. If we bring them now, we won't have to spend money later. She'd been poor too long. I didn't have the heart to argue, so I just put everything she wanted into the ring. Old butler Charles was waiting at the manor gates when we stepped outside. The family dinner was in a few days, and he'd come to escort us back. I stood at the entrance and looked back at the crumbling manor one last time. This broken-down place had been my home for years. Once I walked away, I probably wouldn't be coming back. Lizzie wasn't as sentimental. To her, home was wherever I was. She followed without hesitation. On the carriage ride, Lizzie and I chatted about everything we saw along the road. Charles drove in silence. I could tell he wanted to say something. His expression kept shifting, like words were stuck in his throat, but he never spoke up. He probably didn't know where my father stood on things and didn't want to overstep. When Lizzie mentioned my half-brother Ron, Charles finally spoke. Young Master Ron misses you very much, young Master Keqi. He even wanted to come with me to pick you up. I paused, thinking about that. Before I could respond, Lizzie jumped in. Little Master Ron must be 8 now, right? Has he started learning to read and write? She'd been taught by Charles alongside me, so learning was the first thing on her mind. It was a natural question, and it saved me from having to figure out how I felt about a little brother I barely knew. Charles told us that Ron was already learning noble etiquette. He's a good boy, he said. Very well behaved. He often plays with little Miss Luna, so my little brother was being well taken care of. Luna was my half-sister, born 3 years ago. Ron was 8. Both were my stepmother's children. With me out of the picture, Ron had no rival for the inheritance and got to enjoy a normal, happy childhood. An hour later, the carriage stopped in front of a massive castle. For family members, 50 servants. 50 people waiting on 4. That was noble life. Standing at the entrance was a middle-aged man with a slightly aged face, my father, Baron Braun. Beside him stood a beautiful young woman, my stepmother Isabella. The 2 children stood at her sides, and rows of servants lined up behind them. I hadn't expected this kind of welcome. The whole family, out to greet me. I glanced over everyone, then fixed my eyes on my father. You're back, he said. I nodded. These years must have been hard on you. Another nod. He looked a bit awkward, but kept his composure. This is your mother. Come pay your respects. I didn't move. I didn't acknowledge her at all. The 2 little ones were practically bouncing with excitement, but held back, waiting for their turn to be introduced. My father skipped past Isabella and brought them forward. Ron, Luna, this is your big brother. Say hello, big brother. I'm Ron. I'm Luna. Looking at them, I felt something soften inside me. They were my blood, even if we had different mothers. I pulled 2 gifts from my dimensional ring. A small dagger Blake had forged for me, and a gemstone bracelet Lizzie had picked out. I gave the dagger to Ron and the bracelet to Luna. They looked up at their father for permission. He seemed surprised I'd brought gifts, but nodded. Their faces lit up. Thank you, big brother. I noticed my father's eyes pause on my dimensional ring. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, but he said nothing. He told me a room had been prepared, and I should rest. I walked past everyone and into the castle with Lizzie, not sparing Isabella a single glance. After I was gone, I could hear her voice explode behind me. What kind of attitude is that? He didn't even greet me. I'm the lady of this house. My father apparently said nothing and walked inside. In the room, Lizzie asked me why I hadn't greeted Isabella. Don't know her well enough, I said. No point. At dinner, the whole family sat together. As the eldest son, I should have been seated at my father's right, the position of honor. Instead, Ron was sitting there. I took the last seat without complaint. That told me everything I needed to know about who was being raised as heir. Nobody spoke much. We ate in silence. When my father finished, he wiped his hands and looked at me. Come to my study afterward. I need to talk to you. I nodded. His study was large, 2 walls of bookshelves, a spacious open area in the middle, and a desk by the window. He was reading when I walked in. He looked up at me and said nothing for a long moment, as if he didn't know how to start a conversation with a son he barely knew. I broke the silence myself. Father, I'd like to attend the Royal Knight Academy in the capital after the new year. I need you to write me a letter of introduction. He blinked. Already 12, he murmured, almost to himself. Then he nodded. I'll write it after Grace Day. Don't worry about the fees either. I'll have Charles arrange payment from the family funds. Then his tone shifted. Have you encountered anything unusual recently? I was confused. Like what? These past 3 months had been nothing but training, sword practice, magic, daily routine. Quiet and uneventful. Unless he meant the assassinations from 3 months ago. But how would he know about that? I'd never told anyone. The night intruder's face had been burned beyond recognition. I still didn't know who sent him. When he saw I wasn't going to open up, my father laid it out plainly. He knew about the attacks. I kept my expression flat, but inside I was shocked. He knew. Did that mean he knew who was behind it? He watched my unchanging face and his mouth twitched slightly, probably frustrated that I wouldn't show any reaction even when he was being direct. Then he said it. The man who came to your manor that night. I know who sent him. What? The word escaped before I could stop it. I never expected my father to say that. He knew who had tried to kill me. He'd known all along. And he'd done nothing. Anger? Disappointment? I felt both flash across my face before I forced myself back to calm. I hadn't come here expecting anything from him. I came for the introduction letter. After that, I'd leave this family behind and probably never return. He watched my face, looking for something. Then he told me the full story. 3 months ago, I sent Charles to invite you to the family dinner. But Isabella's guardian knight, Hole, went along with him. Hole was the man who broke into your manor that night. He was a high-rank knight. When Charles came back and told me you'd gone to the magic beast forest, I knew your health had recovered and you'd reached knight level. It was hard to believe, but I knew your talent. When you were 3, I brought in a grand mage to examine you. He said your talent was extraordinary, but you had some unknown illness, something caused by the heavens' jealousy, he called it. No one could find the cause, so no one could cure it. Eventually, I gave up. I married Isabella after that. When Ron was born, she wanted him to inherit the title. She hated the fact that you existed. For your safety, I sent you to the manor on the edge of the territory. That worked for a while. She left you alone. But when Hole told her you'd recovered, she ordered him to hire someone to kill you. The mage on the road, that was her doing. When that failed, she sent Hole himself to your manor. I dispatched someone to protect you, but by the time they arrived, you'd already killed Hole yourself. That surprised me. That's the whole truth. He finished and stared at me, waiting for a reaction. I had none to give him. I listened like it was someone else's story. The pieces fit exactly the way I'd guessed. My stepmother, her knight, my father watching from his castle, knowing everything, doing almost nothing. What will you do? He asked, his voice tight. I looked at him. What will I do? What do you want me to do? The truth is, I won't do anything. I'm just disappointed. You're my father. You knew your son was in danger, and you stood by and watched. That's what I didn't expect. I didn't come back for the family dinner. I didn't come back for that worthless title. If I wanted a barony, my talent alone would get me there within 3 years of coming of age. I'm still young. I don't want to think about all this. I came back for one thing, the academy admission letter. As for who inherits your title, I don't care. Just keep your wife away from me for the rest of my stay. You wouldn't want her to lose her life at such a young age, would you? I turned and walked out without looking back. I went to the garden pavilion and sat there, staring at the sky. No moon tonight. Everything was dark except for the faint glow of the oil lamp beside me, like a small island in a black ocean. I didn't know it at the time, but back in his study, my father sat down heavily at his desk, pulled out a piece of parchment, dipped his quill in ink, and wrote the introduction letter on the spot. He stamped it with the Baron bronze seal, rolled it into a scroll case, and called for Charles. Give this to Keqi. Charles took the case, hesitated like he wanted to say something, then held his tongue. Tomorrow afternoon, my father said, waving him off. I'm tired. After Charles left, my father turned to the window and whispered to himself, this place is too small for you. Leaving is for the best. I hope you find your happiness. When I got back to my room, Lizzie was sitting at the table, chin in her hands, waiting for me. Of course, this wasn't our manor. She had no room of her own here. She'd been waiting in mine this whole time. You're back, she smiled the moment she saw me. If you're tired, take the bed, I said gently. I'll sit nearby and train. I'll train with you, she said brightly. Just being near me was enough to make her happy. And somehow, her cheerfulness washed away the heaviness I'd been carrying. The frustration from my father's study melted away. We sat side by side on the bed and began our nightly magic practice, the same routine we'd built over these past months. It had become as natural as breathing. To avoid running into my stepmother, I kept to myself during my stay at the castle. I skipped family meals and had servants bring food to my room instead. There was a practical reason too. Whenever I ate with the family, the servants refused to feed Lizzie. Whether that was Isabella's order or just the servants being cruel on their own, I didn't know. I thought about punishing them, but decided against it. Making a scene would only give my stepmother ammunition, and my father would be caught in the middle. So I had servants deliver 3 portions to my room, 2 for me, 1 for Lizzie. My body burned through energy fast now, and ordinary meals barely kept up. Eating together with Lizzie was the happiest part of my day. I didn't need a fancy dining hall for that. I was disappointed in my father, but he was still my father. He'd raised me, at least in the beginning. Fighting openly with Isabella would hurt him most of all, and I genuinely liked my little brother and sister. The only person I hated was her. I wasn't going to let that poison the rest of my family. With Hull dead, Isabella had nobody left who could threaten me, and she wouldn't dare try anything inside the castle. My father was still the real master here. The best part of my stay was Ron. My stepmother's influence hadn't touched him. He was warm and genuine, and he started coming to my room every day after his lessons, asking me to teach him swordplay. I didn't hold anything back. I taught him my improved version of the family sword style, the one I'd reworked to include both offense and defense instead of just pure attack. It matched the family breathing technique perfectly. My father found out and watched us practice once from a distance. He didn't interfere. I think he even told Isabella to leave me alone, because she stopped causing trouble after that. Ron was 8 and just starting to build his foundation. The family couldn't afford proper body-strengthening potions like wealthier noble houses used, so they fed him magic beast meat instead. It wasn't ideal, but it would help. And when he got older, his maternal grandfather, a count, could help him find better breathing techniques than what our family had. Watching Ron swing his wooden sword reminded me of myself years ago. He had better starting conditions than I'd had. With effort, he could surpass our father and raise the family's standing. I think that was what our father hoped for. His eldest son had too much talent to stay in a small barony. His second son had average talent but a solid path. Work hard, grow steadily, climb higher with family support. And if the 2 brothers stayed close, they could help each other in the future. The days passed quietly, and then Grace Day arrived. The castle was decorated beautifully. 2 long tables filled the great hall, covered with food and wine. The servants had been given the evening off, their only holiday of the year, along with 50 copper marks each as a gift from the Baron. My father sat at the head of the table, family on both sides. I took the last seat again without complaint. At the second table sat the Baron's 6 guardian knights, high and low rank, who managed and patrolled the territory. They had their own knight families and small estates, but they all served under my father. My father stood and gave a speech. Something about gratitude, the blessing of the god of light, family prosperity, happiness. Everyone raised their glasses. The children, Ron, Luna, and I, had goat's milk instead of wine. Then the meal began. Our table was silent. But from the knight's table, I could hear whispers. Young Master Keqi sitting at the end of the table. Looks like the Baron has given up on him completely. He hasn't come to a family dinner in years. Of course he's been abandoned. A high-rank knight cut them off sharply. Quiet. The Baron's family matters aren't our business. We serve him. That's all. What they didn't realize was that my father, a high-rank knight himself, could hear every word perfectly clearly. His brow furrowed slightly. And what they really didn't know was that I could hear them too. I was a high-rank knight now, and a mid-rank mage on top of that. My senses were sharper than my father's. Every whisper reached me as clearly as if they'd been shouting. I said nothing. I just ate quickly and efficiently, ignoring everything else. When the meal was nearly over, I excused myself and left early. After dinner, there would be a family council. The knights reporting on the year's territory matters and income. A year-end meeting. I had no interest in sitting through that, and I wouldn't have been allowed to stay anyway. Even Ron and Luna were sent to bed. Back in my room, Lizzie had already eaten. I'd arranged her meal before the dinner started. She was sitting cross-legged on the bed, deep in magic practice. I didn't disturb her. The introduction letter was in my hands. The family dinner was done. It was time to prepare for the journey to the capital. Grace Day passed, and it was time to leave. I said a quick goodbye to my father. He looked at me for a long time without speaking, then finally said, "Be safe on the road." That was it. We left quietly. Lizzie was confused when she realized we were walking. "Young master, are we really going to the capital on foot?" "This is my first real journey," I told her. "I don't want to miss the scenery along the way. Besides, we left early. The academy doesn't open for 2 more months. We have plenty of time. I'm not worried about being late. I'm worried about you walking 3,000 li. We'll walk for a while, then find another way to travel. There's an old saying from my hometown. Traveling 10,000 miles teaches more than reading 10,000 books." She frowned. "Your hometown is the Braun Barony." "I've never heard that saying." I smiled and didn't explain. "The plan is simple. Head north. We'll walk through this stretch, then take a carriage from Marquis Ferdinand's territory to the capital. Along the way, we can hunt some magic beasts and earn money so we can live comfortably in the city." "Oh, okay." She wasn't against walking, just confused. Once she understood the plan, she was fine. We strolled along happily. It was our first real trip together, and Lizzie pointed out everything she saw: flowers, birds, strange rocks, distant hills. Her excitement was infectious. I felt free, like a bird finally let out of its cage. The roads were mostly empty. In this world, just surviving was a struggle for ordinary people. Nobles took everything. Free citizens barely scraped by, and many sold themselves into slavery just to eat. Extraordinary power existed in this world, but it stayed locked within the noble class. Common people had almost no access to it. By sunset, we hadn't reached any town. I found a sheltered spot in the woods, a large rock blocking the wind, a stream nearby. We made camp. "Tired?" I asked, seeing how worn out she looked. "I'm fine, young master. Just a little tired. I'll feel better after resting." She was putting on a brave face, but I could see right through it. She was 11 years old, walking all day in winter cold with no proper shelter. I felt bad for pushing her. "Tomorrow we'll find something to ride," I said. "Yes," she nearly jumped with joy. Finally, I roasted a wild chicken over the fire. When it was done, I cut off a leg and handed it to her. She devoured it like she hadn't eaten in days. After dinner, she started yawning immediately, completely exhausted. I pulled a beast-hide blanket from my dimensional ring and wrapped it around her. She leaned against me and fell asleep within minutes. I tossed more wood on the fire, sat cross-legged, and began my nightly magic meditation. The next morning, Lizzie woke up confused for a second, forgetting she wasn't at the manor, then remembered we were on the road. She perked up instantly when I reminded her about finding a mount. "Let's go," she said, bouncing to her feet. We entered the deep forest, searching for a rideable beast. Before long, we heard a howl. My heart jumped. If I could catch whatever made that sound, we'd have our ride. I drew my sword and told Lizzie to ready her staff. We crept forward and found it. A massive silver moon wolf, snow white, nearly 2 meters tall at the shoulder, with thick, powerful legs and a black horn about a foot long growing from its forehead. I knew this species. Fast, agile, and that horn could shoot a beam of white light with serious power. Perfect as a mount, if we could take it down without killing it. This is a silver moon wolf, I whispered to Lizzie. Watch out for the horn attack. When it tries to run, block its escape with magic. We're going to tame this thing. I crept closer. The moment the wolf spotted me, I formed a massive water sphere, nearly 2 meters across, and hurled it straight at the beast. The wolf leaped aside instinctively, right into Lizzie's whirlwind spell. The blast sent it tumbling backward into the water sphere. Both attacks hit in perfect sequence. The wolf was completely disoriented. I charged in and slammed my fist into the top of its head. It crashed to the ground with a whimper. 2 more punches, and its eyes rolled back. Out cold. I tied it up with rope, sat down on its back, and waited for it to wake up. The next step was convincing this wolf that being our ride was its best option. On the main road toward Marquis Ferdinand's territory, a strange sight was moving along. A massive silver moon wolf plodding forward with a little girl chattering away on its back, while a boy walked calmly beside them. That was us. After some sincere persuasion, which mostly involved my fists, the silver moon wolf had agreed to serve as our mount. The beast was smart enough to know when it was beaten. Young master, the wolf's back is so comfortable. Why don't you ride too? It can carry both of us, Lizzie suggested. I smiled. We're not in a hurry. Walking is good exercise. Don't underestimate your master. I'm a knight, remember? This is nothing. With Lizzie riding instead of walking, we stopped less often and made good progress. Around noon, hunger caught up with us, so I found a quiet spot away from the road and caught a wild goat. I cleaned it, rubbed on some special seasoning I'd mixed myself, and set it over the fire. The smell was incredible. Even the silver moon wolf started drooling, staring at the meat with desperate eyes. I slapped it lightly on the head. Relax. You'll get your share. It nodded eagerly and let out a howl of excitement. I smacked it again. Do you want to attract every beast in the area? It whimpered and lay flat, eyes still glued to the roast. When the meat was done, I cut the tenderest piece for Lizzie, tore off a leg for myself, and tossed everything else to the wolf. Lizzie and I ate slowly. The wolf inhaled its portion in seconds and started cracking the bones. You really don't waste anything, do you? I said, shaking my head. After eating, I sat cross-legged to rest. Then I heard noises from the distance. Voices, footsteps, people approaching. I'd chosen this spot specifically because it was far from the road. Who was coming out here? There's smoke ahead. Let's go see if we can find help. A girl's voice, young and commanding. Through the trees, I saw her, a girl of about 14 or 15, dressed in fine clothes but looking exhausted. Her guards were in worse shape, covered in dirt and clearly battle-worn. One knight tried to warn her. Miss, it's not safe. We don't know who's out there. Do you have a better idea? She snapped. We need to rest while we wait for Uncle Durlus. You're all knights. Surely you can protect me. The guards gave in and scouted ahead. They spotted us, 2 kids and a wolf sitting around a campfire. The silver moon wolf had already noticed them. Its teeth were showing, body tense, ready to pounce. The guards froze when they saw it, immediately surrounding the girl in a protective formation. She didn't seem worried at all. Instead, she studied us with curious eyes. When she saw how young Lizzie and I were, her face brightened. Hey there, little brother. What are you doing out here alone? Where are your parents, little brother? My mouth twitched. I opened my eyes and looked at her, a pretty girl with a delicate face, acting like she owned the forest. Little brother, can we rest here too? We've been traveling all morning and I'm exhausted. This forest isn't my property, I said flatly. Do what you want. She pushed past her guards without a care and plopped down right next to the fire. One guard whispered urgently, Miss, your manners. She ignored him completely. I'm Freya Rahman. What's your name? She sat so close I could smell the flowery scent in her hair. I frowned. I'd already sized up her whole group the moment they appeared. This girl was clearly on the run. Her guards were beaten up, she was tired and stressed. Getting involved with whatever trouble was chasing her was the last thing I wanted. But she kept pushing. Come on. What's your name? Keqi, I said reluctantly. Little brother Keqi. Where are you headed? I'm going to Prus City. If we're going the same way, we could travel together. Before I could deflect, one of her guards hissed at her. Miss, why are you telling a stranger our destination? We're being hunted. You can't just announce our escape route. I stared at this ridiculous scene. All I'd wanted was a quiet rest in the woods, and now I was sitting next to a fugitive who couldn't stop talking. I was about to stay silent and let the whole thing pass. But then Lizzie, my sweet, usually cautious Lizzie, heard the words, Prust City, and couldn't contain herself. You're going to Prust City too? What a coincidence. So are we. My face went dark. I'd forgotten to warn her about situations like this, but I couldn't really blame her. She'd probably never met a girl close to her own age before. The excitement had gotten the better of her. So there we were on the main road, 2 girls riding a giant wolf, chattering nonstop, with me and 4 guards walking alongside. I hadn't wanted to get involved, but Lizzie had looked at me with those hopeful eyes, and I'd caved. Through conversation, I learned that Freya was the youngest daughter of Marquis Rahman. She was heading to Prust City for her best friend's coming-of-age ceremony, and that friend turned out to be Serafina. Small world. Freya practically worshipped Serafina for leaving her family to become a pioneer knight. She wished she could do the same, but she wasn't of age yet and hadn't been forced into an arranged marriage, so she had no excuse to break away. Hearing that Serafina's birthday celebration was next month reminded me of our meeting in the Magic Beast Forest. I hadn't expected to hear her name again so soon. Since we were going the same direction, I stopped resisting and just went along with it. As for why Freya was on the run, I didn't ask. The less I knew, the safer I'd be. We stayed on the main road so her guard captain, Durlus, could find his way back. He'd split off to lead the attackers away and hadn't returned yet. But before Durlus showed up, someone else did, Serafina herself, riding at the head of a cavalry unit, coming straight toward us. Freya screamed with joy. Fina, I'm here. Over here. Serafina looked relieved when she saw Freya was safe, then immediately scolded her. Why did you come alone? Do you know how dangerous that was? Your family's letter said you'd be traveling with your brother Niels. Then 2 days ago, I got word you'd left by yourself. Do you know how worried I was? Freya grabbed Serafina's hands and started begging forgiveness with the full force of her charm. But nothing happened. Don't be mad. Please. Serafina couldn't stay angry. Just don't do it again. Then she noticed me, and her expression shifted to a warm smile. I didn't expect to see you here, my friend. Good to see you again, Lady Serafina. You look as impressive as ever. How do you know Freya? Are you here for my celebration? I'm just heading to the capital. Meeting Freya was pure coincidence. She was fleeing, and we happened to cross paths. Same destination, so we walked together. The word, fleeing, made Serafina's eyes sharpen. She turned to Freya and demanded details. Freya explained she'd brought 9 guards led by Uncle Durlus, but they'd been ambushed on the road. The attackers outnumbered them, so Durlus had taken 4 guards to draw the enemy away, while Freya escaped with the remaining 4. Since Durlus still hadn't returned, we slowed our pace and continued on foot toward Prust City. Along the way, Serafina formally invited me to her coming-of-age ceremony. It was on the way, so I agreed. Freya introduced Lizzie to Serafina. Fina, this is my new friend Lizzie. Lizzie, this is my big sister Serafina. When Serafina learned Lizzie was my maid, she didn't show any judgment. She just gave a polite nod. The next day at noon, Durlus finally caught up, but with only 2 of his 4 guards. The other 2 were dead. Freya didn't ask questions, acting carefree as usual, but Serafina pulled Durlus aside and got the full story. Durlus was a grand knight. If even he couldn't handle the attackers easily, this had been no random robbery. It was a planned assassination. But who would target Freya? She was the youngest daughter with no inheritance rights, no political influence, and no enemies. Unless the real target wasn't Freya at all, maybe the attackers wanted to kidnap her to use against the Rahman family. Or maybe this was somehow aimed at Serafina herself. Serafina shook her head. Too little information to figure out. For the rest of the journey, Lizzie and Freya whispered to each other like lifelong friends. Serafina was lost in thought about who was behind the attack. And Durlus kept his eyes on me. Understandable. He'd just been ambushed, and now there was a strange boy walking beside his charge. I didn't take it personally. If I were him, I'd be suspicious too. He was a grand knight, a level above me, but I wasn't intimidated. Once I got my hands on a better breathing technique, I'd reach that level quickly enough. The poor Silver Moon Wolf was terrified through all of this. Every new group of people we met looked at it like raw material. If I hadn't been standing beside it, someone would have killed it for parts by now. I patted its side quietly. Don't worry. Once we reach Prust City, I'll set you free. I caught Serafina watching me talk to the wolf, a curious glint in her eyes, like she'd spotted something interesting. 2 days later, we stopped about 2 kilometers from Prust City. It was time to say goodbye to the Silver Moon Wolf. You've worked hard, I told it. The city is ahead, and if you go any closer, humans will hunt you down. We part ways here. I pulled out my last bloodline flower from the dimensional ring and held it out. The wolf's eyes went wide with desperate longing. It let out a howl, snatched the flower gently from my hand, and bolted toward the forest. At the tree line, it stopped and looked back at me one last time. I waved. Stay away from humans from now on. Unless you want to end up as crafting material, whether it understood or not, I couldn't tell. It vanished into the trees. Serafina watched quietly. Lucky beast, she murmured. Durlus asked if I had any more bloodline flowers to sell. I told him that was my last one. He looked disappointed but accepted it. We approached Prust City. The walls were enormous, 30 meters tall. I had to crane my neck to see the top. The gates were busy with people streaming in and out, guards posted everywhere. As nobles, we skipped the line and walked straight in. Inside, the city hit me with a wall of noise and color. Vendors shouting from stalls lining both sides of a road at least 15 meters wide. Clean streets, tall buildings, shops everywhere. It was far more impressive than the little border town I'd been living near. Welcome to Prust City, Serafina said with a teasing smile, watching Lizzie and me look around. Never seen a city this grand before. It's decent, I said casually. Oh, you've seen better? I just smiled. I couldn't exactly tell her I'd seen cities 100 times more advanced in my past life. She led us into Marquis Ferdinand's castle. Guests who'd come early for the celebration greeted Serafina as she passed, and she returned every greeting with perfect noble etiquette. She personally walked me to my guest room. If you need anything, call for a servant. If you need me specifically, send word. You've had a long journey. Get some rest. Thank you, Lady Serafina. The moment she left, Lizzie collapsed on the bed without any dignity whatsoever. I'm so tired I could die. I felt bad for her. After the celebration, we'll buy a carriage for the rest of the trip to the capital. Yes, she shot upright, suddenly full of energy. But first, we need a gift for Serafina. We agreed to attend her coming-of-age ceremony, so we can't show up empty-handed. Lizzie's excitement turned to worry. Where do we find a gift good enough for a marquis's daughter? We can't have something made in time, and anything ordinary won't do. Want to rest first, or go look now? With that on her mind, she'd never be able to sleep. Let's go look. We'd barely stepped out of the castle when a voice called out behind us. Hey you, kid up ahead. I turned and saw 2 young men. One wore silver clothing with a sword at his hip, silver hair cut short, about 20 years old, sharp and confident. The other was in armor, clearly a knight, roughly the same age. Before I could say anything, the silver-haired one strode up and threw his arm around my shoulders like we were old friends. So you're Serafina's little boyfriend? You're pretty average-looking, I have to say. I nearly choked. You've got the wrong person. I've only met Lady Serafina twice in my life. He blinked, clearly not expecting that answer. He studied my face, confused. If you two aren't close, he said slowly, then why did she personally escort you to your room? Serafina never does that for anyone. She's famous in the Ferdinand family for being cold to everybody, so that was it. She'd shown me a small courtesy, and the entire noble circle had already started gossiping. One polite gesture, and suddenly I was her boyfriend. Noble society really was exhausting. Lizzie and I walked through the busy streets of Prust City, looking for a gift. Behind us trailed 2 uninvited companions, the silver-haired young man and his knight friend. The silver-haired one turned out to be Serafina's older brother, Ian Ferdinand. Same silver hair as his sister, must run in the family. His companion was a noble knight named Dister. When Ian learned I wasn't Serafina's boyfriend, he looked disappointed but refused to give up. He started following us everywhere. I stopped and waited for him to catch up. He jogged over without a shred of embarrassment. Hey, Keqi, what a coincidence running into you again. We had never separated. He'd been 10 steps behind us the entire time. What do you actually want? I asked. After some hesitation, he got to the point. What do you think of Serafina? She's beautiful, kind-hearted, brave, and independent. His face lit up. Since you think she's so great, have you thought about marrying her? No, but you could. This was bizarre. Her own brother was trying to set her up with me? She'd left her family specifically to avoid an arranged marriage. And here he was playing matchmaker with a stranger she'd met twice. Give it up, I said firmly. I see Lady Serafina as a friend. Nothing more. I know my own standing. I don't even have a title. I'm barely above a free citizen. Ian sighed dramatically. What a shame. She finally meets someone she actually gets along with. And it's just friendship. I turned and kept walking, ignoring the two shadows behind me. Lizzie tugged my sleeve. Young master, Serafina is really beautiful. You really didn't feel anything. What was going on today? Why was everyone suddenly obsessed with romance? Think about it, I told her. With my status, who would want me? I have no title, no territory. Besides Serafina, the only person I can really talk to in this world is you. She nodded, not fully understanding, and dropped the subject. We stopped in front of a small jewelry shop. I was examining some necklaces when a harsh voice cut through the air. Old man, get out here and pay your stall fee. If you're late again, we'll smash this place. A group of thugs with clubs stood at the shop entrance. The leader, a brute named Weiss, was barking orders. An old shopkeeper rushed out, bowing and scraping. Boss Weiss, business has been bad today. I haven't sold anything yet. Could you wait just a little? No excuses. Pay, or we smash. Weiss raised his club. The old man gave in, went inside, and came back with 10 copper marks. Weiss snatched the money and punched the old man for good measure. The shopkeeper stumbled backward, about to fall. I caught him before he hit the ground. Weiss glared at me coldly, ready to cause more trouble. Then his eyes landed on Ian standing behind me. His face went pale instantly. He muttered a threat, "Watch yourself, kid," and hurried away with his gang. Moments later, I could hear them shouting at the next stall. The old man sighed. Protection fees keep going up. Used to be 2 copper marks. Now it's 10. How is anyone supposed to survive? He thanked me and warned me not to cross Weiss, who apparently had noble backing. I smiled and changed the subject. Do you have any higher-end necklaces in your shop? His sadness vanished instantly. I have one special piece, my shop's treasure. But it's expensive. Show me. He brought out a polished wooden box and opened it. Inside lay a blue sapphire necklace. The gem was deep and brilliant, like the brightest star in a night sky, set in an exquisitely crafted chain. Every detail showed a master craftsman's hand. I was drawn to it immediately. How much? 50 gold marks. It's actually a consignment piece from another customer. That's the firm price, 50 gold marks. Not cheap, but for a gift to a marquis's daughter, it was modest enough to avoid any misunderstanding. Too expensive would make people think we were more than friends. Too cheap would seem disrespectful. This was just right for our relationship. I'll take it. I paid for my dimensional ring, placed the necklace box inside, and left the shop with Lizzie. Ian was waiting outside. Were you buying a gift for Serafina? I looked at him, said nothing, and kept walking. I ignored Ian's questions, and we wandered the streets a bit longer before heading back to the castle. With the gifts sorted, all that was left was waiting for the ceremony. I sat down to meditate, but barely got started before someone pounded on my door. Kit, get out here. I know you're inside. Come out, or I'm coming in. Not a visitor. Trouble. I told Lizzie to stay back and walked to the door myself. Just as the person outside was swinging to knock again, I yanked it open. He lost his balance and nearly stumbled into the room. I got a good look at him. About 20 years old, gold hair parted down the middle, a mean look in his eyes, jutting chin, sickly yellow skin, and a body so frail it was obvious he'd been ruined by too much drinking and indulgence. You trying to mess with me? Do you know who I am? He glared at me. Who are you? I replied calmly. Didn't your father tell you? That shut him up. He sputtered for a moment, then demanded, Who are you? What's your relationship with Lady Serafina? So that's what this was about. My connection to Serafina had drawn attention. In noble circles, nothing stayed private. A stranger appearing next to a famous marquis's daughter was bound to raise eyebrows. I'm Zeltaric, he announced. Serafina's fiancé. Stay away from her, or you'll regret it. He drew a finger across his throat for emphasis. Now it clicked. This was the man Marquis Ferdinand had chosen for his daughter. No wonder she'd run away to become a pioneer knight. This pathetic specimen. If he didn't have a powerful family name behind him, Nobody on the street would give him a second glance. The Tarek family was one of the kingdom's 6 marquee houses. An equal-rank marriage between the Ferdinand and Tarek families made political sense. But Serafina had refused, and the kingdom's pioneer law protected her right to leave. What my relationship with Lady Serafina is, I said flatly, has nothing to do with you. And barging into a guest's room uninvited. Is that really how a marquis's son behaves? If word got out, I imagine your father would be quite embarrassed. His face went rigid. He knew I was right. His father was famously proud of the family's reputation. If this little stunt reached his ears, Zell would face serious punishment at home. You've got nerve, kid. Don't let me catch you alone. One last empty threat, and he turned and left. I watched him go with a smirk. He looked terrible, but he had just enough survival instinct to know when to retreat. After closing the door, Lizzie spoke up. Hasn't Lady Serafina already decided to become a pioneer? Why does she still have a fiancé? Her coming-of-age ceremony hasn't happened yet, I explained. Until it does, she's not officially an adult. She's still technically under Marquis Ferdinand's authority. Noble society runs on ceremonies and formalities, but everyone already knows she's leaving. Why is that awful man still hanging on? Because he's not the type to think things through. He acts like a thug, not a noble. One small push from me, and he backed down. People like him are common. We just need to stay out of their way. Then came another knock at the door. Lizzie and I both tensed. But this knock was gentle and polite. Not Zell. I opened the door to find Serafina standing there, looking apologetic. I came to apologize, she said. I heard what happened with Zell. I'm sorry you got dragged into my problems. Don't worry about it, I said, steering the conversation elsewhere. I just didn't expect that being your friend would make people jealous. Being known as your acquaintance is quite the honor, it seems. She smiled despite herself. Don't tease me. It's because I'm a marquis's daughter. Everything I do gets talked about. I hate it. I finally meet someone I can actually talk to, and my background causes them trouble. She paused, then added, and please stop calling me Lady Serafina. It feels too formal between friends. Just call me Serafina. I nodded. All right then. Serafina, actually, since your celebration is in 2 days, I have something for you. I pulled the wooden box from my dimensional ring. Her eyebrows rose. Can I open it now? It's yours. She lifted the lid and saw the sapphire necklace. It was a simple gem, no magical properties, but beautifully crafted. The gift is modest, I said. If I gave it to you at the ceremony in front of everyone, it might seem underwhelming. So I'm giving it to you early, just between us, she smiled. Warmly, thanked me, and we chatted a few more minutes before she left, apparently not caring at all whether being seen at my door would start even more gossip. At the entrance to the banquet hall, well-dressed butlers and maids were greeting guests. I handed over the invitation Serafina had prepared for me and was led inside. The hall was impressive, elegant decorations, flowers, candles, fine tableware, white tablecloths hanging to the floor. Long tables were loaded with appetizers while the kitchen staff kept busy preparing more. Once all the guests were seated, Marquis Ferdinand himself entered the room. He was a slightly heavy man with a serious face, deep eyes, and an air of authority. On his chest, he wore the family's Medal of Honor, granted by the first king centuries ago. Everyone stood to greet him. He looked around the room and began his speech, welcoming the guests and announcing the purpose of the evening, his daughter Serafina's coming-of-age celebration. Then Serafina walked in wearing a white evening gown. With her pale skin and silver hair flowing behind her, she looked like an angel descending from another realm. Several young men in the room forgot how to breathe. The Marquis continued with a long, sentimental speech about his precious daughter growing up like a rose in the castle garden, beautiful and strong. It went on and on. I couldn't help thinking, how did he memorize all that? Then the food arrived. Course after course, appetizers, main dishes, desserts. Between courses, a band played music that felt very Western to my past life sensibilities. I had no idea how to appreciate it. At the head table, the entire Ferdinand family sat together, their faces blank while the Marquis did all the talking. When the dinner wound down, he stood and addressed the older nobles. Let us old folks leave first, so the young people can enjoy themselves. The senior nobles followed him out. The moment they were gone, the hall came alive. Young nobles jumped up to find dance partners, and couples began swirling across the floor to the music. I had no interest in dancing. I stood up quietly and headed for the exit. Nobody noticed a small figure slipping away. The night air outside was cool and still, a different world from the noise inside. I took a deep breath and started walking. Keqi Braun. Stop right there, Zell. The middle-parted idiot was back. I didn't stop. I kept walking out of the hall, hoping he'd give up. He didn't. He followed me into the corridor. You dare ignore me? He reached for my shoulder, trying to force me to stop. I shifted my body slightly, and his hand grabbed nothing but air. I'd had enough. I turned and stared straight into his eyes, letting a thread of killing intent seep through. Don't push your luck, I said quietly. We are not acquainted. If you bother me again, I will end you. His face went stiff. The color drained from his cheeks. Whatever courage had brought him out here evaporated under that stare. I turned and walked away without another word. He didn't follow. What I didn't know was that Ian had been watching from a distance, hoping for entertainment. When he felt my killing intent and the pressure I released, it startled him badly. He couldn't understand how someone my age could project that kind of aura. For a moment, he wondered if I'd already reached high-rank knight, same as him, then shook his head and dismissed the thought as impossible. Back in the room, Lizzie was still deep in meditation. I closed the door softly, sat on the bed, and began my own practice. 2 hours later, I felt my magic reserves grow by another small measure. Training was still the most satisfying thing in my life. Everything here was done. Time to leave this place and its noble drama behind. Lizzie finished her practice and was rubbing her numb legs when I opened my eyes. Let's leave for the capital tomorrow. Her face lit up instantly. Yes, but please, no more walking. I laughed. Fine. We'll buy a carriage. Hooray. The next morning, we went to the North District and found a carriage shop. I picked a simple single-horse carriage, nothing fancy. Some nobles needed 2-horse carriages to show off their status, but I had no interest in that. 50 gold marks for something practical and reliable. With the carriage ready, I just needed to say goodbye to Serafina. As I was driving back toward the castle, I ran right into her on the street. She was out shopping for supplies. Keqi, what are you up to? She asked, eyeing the carriage. I'm heading to the capital today. I was actually coming to find you and say goodbye. Oh, what a coincidence. After talking, I learned Serafina was also leaving today, heading south to begin building her territory. She'd expected me to leave soon. She said I seemed like someone who never stayed in one place for long. A traveler passing through. Once I reach the southern border, I'll start developing my land, she said. When you finish at the academy, if you don't have anywhere to go, I hope you'll come help me. I thought about it, then offered some final advice. If you're serious about building a territory, remember what I told you before. Safety comes first. People in this world live in constant fear. If you can give them a place where they feel safe, they'll come from anywhere. Build high walls around your territory. They won't stop powerful magic beasts, but they'll give ordinary people a sense of security. Once free citizens start arriving, prosperity follows naturally. That was as much as I should say. Anything more would be overstepping as a friend. Serafina looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Then she said something that caught me off guard. Goodbye, Keqi. I wish you strength in battle, and I hope you find where you belong, where I belong. The words hit me in a strange way. I went blank for a second before recovering. And I hope you get your territory and your title. We parted ways. Lizzie and I bought road supplies, then drove our new carriage out through the north gate of Pruss City. As we left, I felt it, eyes watching us from the city wall. Someone was tracking our departure. The gaze lingered until we were out of sight. Was I cursed? Everywhere I went, trouble followed. Could I not just travel to the capital in peace? Lizzie, we're being watched, I said inside the carriage. Stay alert. This road might not be safe. Before I finished speaking, an arrow punched through the carriage window. I snatched it out of the air, grabbed Lizzie, and we both leaped out. We were surrounded. Black-clad fighters had closed in from every direction. I leaned against the carriage with Lizzie at my back and quickly assessed them. No grand knights among them. The strongest was their leader, a high-rank knight. The rest were mid-rank or lower. I exhaled with relief. Friends, I think you have the wrong person, I called out. I haven't offended anyone. No answer. They just tightened the circle. They weren't here to talk. I turned to Lizzie. Stay behind me and protect yourself. I'll handle this. I can help, she said, scared but determined. Just watch my back. That's enough. I drew my sword, locked eyes on the leader, the only real threat, and charged. I slashed downward. He raised his blade to block. The instant his weapon was occupied, I fired a point-blank fireball with my left hand straight into his face. He didn't even have time to scream. My fire magic was far stronger now than when I'd been a trainee mage. At mid-rank, a direct hit was fatal, instant death. Without pausing, I flashed to the next enemy, a mid-rank knight, and took his head with one clean stroke. 2 down in seconds. The remaining attackers panicked. One shouted, "Run? We can't beat him." He didn't finish the sentence before my sword was through his chest. The others scattered. I stopped chasing and switched to instant cast fireballs, picking them off as they fled. Lizzie joined in, launching wind blades that cut down the rest. It was over in 15 minutes. Every attacker was dead. I searched the bodies. Almost no money, just a few gold marks. But on the leader, I found a letter. The paper was high-quality parchment, the kind nobles used. The handwriting was neat and educated. No name, no seal, nothing to identify the sender. But the material itself told me enough. Whoever ordered this was a noble. I dumped the bodies in the trees, and we drove on. "Young master, who were they?" Lizzie asked from inside the carriage. "Why did they want to kill us?" "I don't know. Someone with noble backing, clearly, but I can't tell who yet." We hadn't gone far when we ran into yet another unexpected encounter. We'd barely gotten moving again when someone else blocked our path. This time it was Zel Tarek, the middle-parted fool from the banquet. I hadn't expected this. We'd had barely any interaction, but I didn't know Zel's true nature yet. He was the worst kind of noble's son. His father, Marquis Tarek, had given up on him long ago after comparing him endlessly to his talented, respectable eldest brother. Without his father's discipline, Zel had become a monster in the family's territory, bullying commoners, ruining young women's lives, terrorizing anyone too weak to fight back. Families with daughters would move away just to avoid him. Children stopped crying at the mention of his name. If he hadn't been a marquis's son, someone would have killed him years ago. A petty man like that wasn't going to let me embarrass him and walk away. He'd tracked my departure from Prust City, gathered his men, and ridden hard to catch up. "Almost let you get away," he sneered from horseback. "Men, break his legs. I don't want any other man near Serafina." My expression went cold. I hadn't wanted trouble, but trouble had found me. And this time, I wasn't going to leave it half-finished. I drew my sword. In a flash, I was behind one of his guards. Before the man could react, his head was on the ground. I moved to the next one, then the next. Within seconds, every guard Zel had brought was dead. He stood there alone, trembling. You can't kill me. I'm a marquis's son. My father will never let you go." I walked toward him slowly, sword in hand. "Where did you find the courage to come after me? Did you really think nobody would fight back?" "No. Please. I won't do it again. Please spare me." His face was twisted with terror, snot running down his chin, legs shaking so badly he could barely stand. I tapped his cheek lightly with the flat of my blade. "Young people make mistakes. That's normal. Just be more careful in your next life." Before he could beg again, I drew the blade across his throat. Blood sprayed out. He clutched his neck, coughing, choking, the blood flooding into his lungs. Within moments, his eyes went empty. I searched every body and took everything valuable. The biggest prize was Zel's dimensional ring, nearly 100 cubic meters of space. Inside it was a fortune. I dragged all the bodies deep into the forest and waited until the smell of blood drew wild animals. Once beasts started feeding, the evidence would disappear completely. Even if Marquis Tarek sent investigators, they'd find nothing. My only concern was that someone might know about the friction between Zel and me. But what I didn't realize was that when Zel left Prust City that morning, people assumed he was chasing after Serafina, since she'd also departed the same day. Nobody connected his departure to me. Back on the road, I started going through the contents of Zel's ring. There was a lot of stuff. The most disturbing discovery was a large collection of women's undergarments in various colors and styles. The man had been even more disgusting than I'd thought. I pulled everything useless out and incinerated it with a fireball. The valuable items totaled over 30,000 gold marks, more than 200 elemental crystals, plus over 10,000 gold coins. Incredible wealth for one person to carry around. I'd assumed it came from his family, but in truth, Zel had squeezed every coin from ordinary people through protection rackets. The same kind of thuggery I'd seen on the streets of Prust City. The money on his finger had been stolen from people who couldn't fight back. With the road finally clear, Lizzie and I kept driving north. I started thinking ahead. We'll arrive at the capital early. The academy won't open for almost 2 months. Should we rent a room at an inn or buy a small house? Lizzie shut that down immediately. Buying a house is wasteful. We'll stay at an inn. Once school starts, we can move into the dormitory. Same old Lizzie. Always saving money. So what do you want to do for 2 months? I asked. I don't have plans, young master. I'm your mate. My job is to take care of you. You need to think for yourself more. If you don't use your brain, how are you any different from a black pig? Her face scrunched up instantly. Eyebrows knotted, lips pouted, cheeks puffed out like a tiny volcano about to erupt. How dare you compare me to a pig? I'm not talking to you anymore. Humph. A week later, Lizzie and I arrived at the Gothic royal city. The capital was breathtaking. The entire city was built from hard black obsidian stone, and the walls towered above us, radiating power and security. The kingdom had been founded over 300 years ago when Theodoric I led the Western Goths in a 100-year war against the Hainan barbarians, claiming the Gothic peninsula. Now it was Theodoric III on the throne. The capital sat on the kingdom's eastern border, right next to the vast eastern magic beast forest. Theodoric I had built it there on purpose, the king guarding the frontier for his people. I had to admire that. The kingdom's strongest military force, the Storm Legion, was stationed inside that eastern forest. The Knight Academy was also on the east side, making the eastern district the most prosperous part of the city. We entered through the south gate and were immediately swallowed by the energy of the place. Crowds everywhere, people rushing, strolling, haggling, laughing. Shops and food stalls lined every street. The noise of vendors, bargaining, and footsteps all blended together into something alive. Lizzie stuck her head out the carriage window, eyes wide, taking it all in. She was thrilled to finally be somewhere with a roof and a bed. I found an inn and jumped down from the carriage. A young attendant rushed over immediately. Are you dining or staying, sir? Staying. 2 people. The innkeeper, a man named Thomas, set us up with a large room on the 2nd floor, 2 bedrooms, and a sitting area. 2 gold marks per day. With over 40 days until the academy opened, that came to about 90 gold marks. Expensive, but comfort was worth it. I sold the carriage to Thomas at the original price. He was happy to take it. In the capital, he could resell it for double. When he learned I was a noble student enrolling at the academy, he became even more respectful, personally escorting us to our room. With food and lodging settled, I decided to visit the Adventurers Guild to get an adventurer's certificate. It would serve as identification, important in a world where common people had no way to prove who they were. Nobles had family crests, but free citizens had nothing. People disappeared all the time, and nobody could track them. First, though, Lizzie and I went exploring. The streets were lively and beautiful, but not everything was pleasant. At a street corner, a small girl in rags was begging, her hair matted and her face covered in dirt. Please, I'm so hungry. Can anyone spare some food? People walked right past her. Lizzie pulled out 2 copper marks and dropped them into the girl's cracked bowl. Thank you, big sister, the girl said. Lizzie smiled and walked on, happy to have helped. I'd stopped to observe. The girl tucked the coins into her clothes and went right back to her act. Once we were far enough away, I spoke up. That girl's complexion was healthy. She eats better than you do. She was a fraud. Lizzie had been humming a song. She froze, tilted her head, then stomped her foot and puffed out her cheeks. That's horrible. She tricked me. Be more careful next time, I said gently. Her shopping mood was completely ruined. She trudged behind me like a defeated rooster for the rest of the walk. We reached the Adventurers Guild, a huge building with a spacious hall. 2 enormous boards flanked the entrance, covered in job postings. Tables and chairs filled one side for adventurers to rest, find teammates, and exchange information. The front counter stretched across the room, divided into sections: job postings, task completion, identity registration, material trading. I went to the registration counter. The woman handling it was about 20, with short gray hair and the guild's standard uniform. When she saw how young I was, her eyebrow went up. Little brother, are you sure you want to register as an adventurer? It's very dangerous, you know. I nodded. All right. Place your hand on this crystal ball and channel your battle energy or magic power. It'll measure your level. If you're not at least a knight or mage, you can't register. I studied the crystal ball, some kind of alchemical device, and placed my hand on it. I fed in only battle energy. I wasn't about to reveal my magic abilities. The numbers climbed and stopped around 400. The woman's mouth fell open slightly. What do the numbers mean? I asked. She recovered and explained. The ball measures your energy level. Beginner rank is around 100, mid rank around 500, high rank around 1000. It's a rough guide. True assessment also considers physical strength, combat ability, and reaction speed. I deliberately held back, showing only enough to register as a low to mid-range knight. No need to draw attention. She helped me complete the registration and handed me a black crystal card, my adventurer's certificate. It recorded my name and mission points, but not my actual level. The guild issued 3 card colors, black, silver, and gold, representing 3 tiers. Higher cards meant better deals on supplies and priority on jobs. Certificate in hand, I was about to leave with Lizzie when something on the job board caught my ear, a conversation between adventurers about a posting that sounded very interesting. As I was passing the job board on my way out of the guild, I overheard adventurers talking about something that caught my attention. Did you hear? The Knight Academy is holding this year's freshman trial inside the Magic Beast Forest. Are they insane? Most new students are just trainees. That's like throwing sheep to wolves. Nobody knew why the academy had changed the trial location. Then a boy about my age stepped in, well-dressed, sharp-eyed, carrying a massive great sword on his back. He spoke with complete confidence. I know why. The kingdom's leadership wants to develop the Shattered Star Mountains. This trial is a warning to all knights and mages. War is coming. The adventurers looked skeptical, so the boy added proudly, I got this straight from the prince himself. They're even going to crown several freshman kings and give them special training. The mention of the prince made everyone take the information seriously. The boy strutted out, tossing back one last insult. Clueless bunch. Nobody cared about his attitude. They were already thinking about what the news meant. If the kingdom was mobilizing to develop the Shattered Star Mountains, there would be work, lots of it. Adventurers lived for that kind of opportunity. I was deeply interested too. The Shattered Star Mountains were legendary. Supposedly a fallen star had crashed into the peaks long ago, scattering divine fragments across the range. The area was saturated with strange magnetic energy, crawling with high-ranked beasts, and considered forbidden territory for humans. In this world, stars represented the gods. A fallen star meant a lost god's remains. If the kingdom wanted to develop that site, it would attract attention from every power on the continent, especially the Hyman Empire to the north, the Gothic kingdom's ancient enemy. Theodoric I had carved this kingdom out of Hyman territory 3 centuries ago. They'd never forgiven that. If all this was true, the next few years would be turbulent. And in turbulent times, heroes emerged. I couldn't help feeling a spark of excitement about what lay ahead. I didn't know it then, but across the kingdom, other talented young people were preparing too. In the Raman territory, a 13-year-old girl in a red robe broke through to high-rank mage. In the Emil territory, a 13-year-old boy was beating a veteran high-rank knight in a sparring match. And here in the capital, inside a grand castle, a boy named Conrad Pelayo, son of a duke, had already reached high-rank knight, watched approvingly by his father, a man who looked 20 but was actually over 40, his aging slowed by his extraordinary power. I knew nothing about any of them. Back at the inn, I spent the next several days in intense training. I pushed my mage level from mid-rank all the way to high rank, finally matching my knight level. I also looked into getting a better breathing technique. The Adventurers Guild sold some, but they were all basic, capped at high rank knight, the same limit as my family's method. Anything more advanced was locked behind the upper nobility, who guarded their techniques jealously. That left one path, the Knight Academy. Students could earn credits and exchange them for advanced breathing techniques. This was how lower nobles climbed. Get a better technique, raise your level, earn military merit, and eventually petition the kingdom for a higher title. Pioneer knights had it easier. Expanding the kingdom's territory earned merit fast. Claim enough land, and the crown would happily grant a title. With my breakthrough complete, I decided it was time to visit the Magic Beast Forest on the kingdom's eastern border, partly to train, partly to scout the area where the freshman trial would take place. I told Lizzie she was coming with me. She was excited and nervous at the same time. I stopped at a magic potion shop and bought healing supplies for the trip. But on the way to the forest, I ran into someone I hadn't expected to see. On our way to the magic beast forest, I ran into the greatsword boy from the Adventurers Guild. We were walking the same path without knowing each other. When we both realized our routes matched exactly, we turned and stared at each other with suspicion. "Why are you following me?" we both said at the same time. "Why are you copying what I say?" Again, perfectly in sync. Lizzie burst out laughing. "You two are ridiculous." That broke the tension. The boy introduced himself as Kevin Stank and suggested we team up. He had sharp, steady eyes and an easy confidence about him. I liked him immediately. Keqi Braun. Happy to team up. Kevin was talkative. He confirmed he was also a freshman this year and repeated the news about the trial being held in the Magic Beast Forest. Then he added something I hadn't heard. This year's incoming class is different. In past years, most freshmen were just trainees. This time, mid-rank and even high-rank knights are enrolling. The competition will be fierce. That was worth thinking about. Something unusual was going on. When everything breaks from the pattern, there's always a reason behind it. Since I was new to the capital and didn't know the local forest, I let Kevin choose our destination. He suggested the Twilight Plains, rolling grasslands deeper in the forest where creatures called star beasts roamed. They were shaped like wild bulls, mostly low to mid-rank, good for combat practice. Better yet, they carried star element magic crystals inside their bodies, which sold for good money as crafting materials. We headed out. The forest near the capital was quiet. Almost no beasts at all. That made sense. So close to the city, anything dangerous had been hunted or scared off long ago. I was surprised to see wooden cabins with people living in them deep in the woods. Kevin explained they were hunters and guides, free citizens and retired adventurers who'd settled here permanently. Many made their living leading adventurer groups through the forest. An hour later, we reached the Twilight Plains. The landscape changed completely. Rolling hills covered in waist-high wild grass, almost no trees anywhere. "Why don't trees grow here?" I wondered aloud. Kevin didn't answer that, but warned me to watch for snakes hidden in the grass. He grabbed a long stick and started beating the ground ahead of us as we walked. Half an hour passed with no star beasts in sight. Then we heard fighting from off to our side. Kevin and I exchanged a look and agreed to check it out. I pulled Lizzie behind me for safety. Over the next hill, we saw a boy roughly our age battling several star beasts at once. He was agile, dodging their charges and striking back, but he was outnumbered and losing ground. When he spotted the three of us on the hilltop, he immediately changed direction. He vaulted over the beast's encirclement and sprinted straight toward us, shouting, "Hey, friends up there, help me out." Kevin and I both frowned. This kid was leading his problem right to us. But the star beasts were exactly what we'd come for. I turned to Kevin. "Let's take them down together." He grinned. We charged past the fleeing boy and met the beasts head-on. Kevin swung his greatsword with heavy, powerful blows while I struck fast with my longsword. Lizzie supported us from behind with magic attacks. Within 15 minutes, every star beast was dead. I flicked the blood from my blade, sheathed it, and turned toward the boy. My expression wasn't friendly. He scratched his head nervously. "Sorry, I panicked. The situation was bad, and I didn't know what else to do. Please forgive me." He bowed deeply, looking genuinely sorry. I wasn't ready to let it go. I glanced at Kevin to see what he thought. Kevin studied the boy's face with a flicker of recognition. "You're Rust?" The boy looked shocked. "You know me?" "Of course I do. Everyone knows Viscount Balaam's illegitimate son." Rust's face tightened at the words, but he kept his composure. He didn't lash out. "Knowing who I am doesn't settle this," Kevin continued. "What are you going to offer to make up for dragging those beasts at us?" Rust sighed. "Fine. I'll share a piece of information with you. But you can't tell anyone else, and whatever we get from it, we split evenly." "Talk," I said coldly. "And you'd better hope your information is good enough. I found a place deep in the Twilight Plains where star radiance vines are growing." "Interested?" Kevin's head snapped around. "Star radiance vines?" He clearly didn't buy it. "If you really found those, why would you share?" "What aren't you telling us?" Star radiance vines were the main ingredient for star radiance potions, something every knight dreamed of. The potions could boost battle energy and help break through to the next level. They were incredibly rare and fetched enormous prices whenever they appeared. Russ sighed and came clean. "There's a high-rank magic beast guarding the vines. From what I could tell, its combat power is at Grand Knight level. I'm only a mid-rank knight. I can't even get close, let alone pick anything. I need help." We worked together, Kill the beast, and split everything 4 ways. Kevin's face darkened. Kill a high-rank beast? Are you crazy? We're all just mid-rank knights. Going against that thing is suicide. He assumed I was mid-rank too, since that's all I'd shown. And he figured Lizzie was just my maid with no real combat ability. I thought it over carefully. On paper, we were outmatched. But cooperation was humanity's greatest advantage, the reason we'd survived in a world full of monsters. With the right strategy, weaker fighters could take down stronger enemies. I think it's doable, I said to Kevin. But we need to see the location first and study the beast before committing. Kevin hesitated. The vines were too valuable to walk away from. He agreed to at least go look. We followed Russ deeper into the twilight plains, carefully skirting around the territories of several high-rank beasts along the way. Then I spotted something useful, a shadow snake, a low-rank beast resting in the grass ahead. See that? Shadow snake. We can handle it. If we coat our blades with its venom, we'll have a much better chance against the high-rank beast. 1 drop of shadow snake venom is lethal enough to affect even a powerful creature. Kevin and Rust's eyes lit up. Great idea, Lizzie, I said. You take this one. Kevin looked worried. Can she handle a magic beast? She's not as weak as you think. Lizzie crept forward with her staff, got into range, and struck. Several wind blades sliced through the air simultaneously. The shadow snake's coiled body was cut into pieces before it could even uncoil to attack. Kevin and Russ stood there with their mouths open. They'd assumed she was a helpless servant. Now they were looking at a mage whose level was at least as high as theirs. This was exactly why I'd had her fight. If she was going to help against the high-rank beast, she deserved a share of the rewards. Showing her strength now meant nobody could argue about splitting things 4 ways later. I walked over to the dead snake, pried open its jaw with my sword, and found venom still dripping from the fangs. Stop staring and come get your blades coated. They snapped out of it and rushed over. We carefully applied the venom to all our weapons. When we were done, we exchanged glances. Everyone's confidence had risen considerably. Let's go meet that beast. Half an hour later, we reached the spot. Lying in the grass ahead was a unicorn magic wolf, a massive creature with a single horn on its head, eyes closed in a light sleep. Behind it grew several thick, vibrant vines with leaves dotted with faint starlight. Star radiance vines. The real thing. I studied the wolf's energy carefully. Unicorn wolf. Combat strength at early stage Grand Knight level. As if it heard my thoughts, the wolf raised its head and sniffed the air. It had caught our scent. Its eyes opened, cold, sharp, and murderous. Its jaws parted slightly, revealing rows of dripping fangs. I sighed. So much for a surprise attack. But none of us were backing down. We spread out and began closing in from different angles. The wolf stood, locked its gaze on us, and growled low. The fight was about to begin. No chance for a surprise attack. We'd have to fight it head-on. I laid out the plan quickly. Lizzie handles ranged attacks to disrupt the wolf. Kevin, you draw its attention from the front. Rust and I flank from both sides and go for killing blows. Kevin carried a greatsword, clearly a power fighter, so he was the natural choice to hold the front line. We charged. The unicorn wolf watched us come with contempt. It lunged straight at Kevin. He raised his greatsword with both hands to block, but the impact was devastating. The wolf's strength sent Kevin and his heavy blade flying backward like they weighed nothing. I reacted instantly, thrusting my sword into the wolf's exposed flank. But the blade barely pierced its hide, less than an inch deep. The fur and muscle were incredibly tough. Still, I drew blood. The wolf snarled in fury and whipped around to face me, forgetting Kevin entirely. I'd become its target. I wasn't too worried. If I hadn't been hiding my true level, that first strike would have crippled the beast. But I couldn't reveal my full strength in front of these people. Not yet. Then the wolf's horn began to glow. It was charging a magical attack. Watch out, Russ shouted. It's about to use magic. That's when Lizzie made her move. Seeing the wolf standing still to gather energy, she poured all her magic power into a single massive wind blade and launched it at the wolf's tail. The wolf was so focused on charging its horn attack that it never sensed the blade coming. The wind blade sliced clean through, severing the tail completely. The wolf screamed. The magic it had been building in its horn collapsed instantly, and the backlash hit it hard. Blood poured from its mouth, and its body swayed uncontrollably. Without its tail, the wolf couldn't balance. It bent its legs trying to steady itself, wobbling like a drunk. Kevin and Rust saw the opening and rushed forward. I stopped them. Don't get close. A dying beast is the most dangerous. It might have one last attack in it. They held back, weapons ready, blocking escape routes instead. The wolf tried to lunge at Kevin again, but without its tail to steer, it couldn't change direction mid-charge. Kevin sidestepped and let the wolf crash into his greatsword. Both front legs were slashed open. The wolf tumbled and rolled before barely regaining its footing. Now it was afraid. Instead of attacking, it tried to run. We didn't let it. We kept harassing it from all sides, cutting, dodging, never letting it build momentum. Minutes passed. The wolf's movements grew sluggish. The blood flowing from its wounds had changed color, no longer bright red, but streaked with gray. The shadow snake venom was doing its work, poisoning the blood from within. Finally, the unicorn wolf let out one last defiant howl and collapsed. Dead. We stood there grinning at each other. 4 mid-rank fighters had just taken down a Grand Knight-level beast. We'd used every trick available, venom, teamwork, strategy, but we'd done it. Then came the real prize. We rushed to the star radiance vines growing behind where the wolf had been lying. Thick, vibrant green stalks dotted with leaves that glowed faintly with starlight. The real thing. We're rich, Rust whispered excitedly. Only cut the vines, Kevin said. Leave the roots. They might grow back for a future harvest. Everyone agreed. Since our swords were still coated in snake venom, we used daggers to carefully harvest every vine. When the last one was cut, we couldn't help laughing out loud. Wait, Russ said, eyeing the wolf's body. He walked over and started cutting off the horn. The body is poisoned and worthless, but the horn is a valuable alchemy material. And the pelt can fetch some gold marks too. Good thinking. I helped him skin the wolf. Working together, we had a clean, intact pelt in minutes. We packed everything into our dimensional rings and left fast. The smell of blood was thick in the air, and lingering would only attract more beasts. What none of us noticed was that after we left, a massive tiger-type beast arrived, drawn by the scent. It sniffed the wolf carcass but didn't touch it. Instead, it raised its head, stared in the direction we'd gone, watched for a long moment, then turned and ran deeper into the twilight plains.